This is Comic Geek Speak, episode 1762, the CGS Best of 2019 Awards Nominations Show.
Laser beams, opinions like the seasons on everything you read in comics, movies, games, toys, artists, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek, uniting the world's mightiest heroes. This is...
I'm Adam Murdo.
And I'm Ian Levinstein. Been a while since I've been able to say "and."
Well, there you go. There's your conjunction. Conjunction, what's that function? Well, that function is to lead us in to the big nomination show for this year's Best of Awards at Comic Geek Speak. It's the evening you've been waiting for before the other evening you've been waiting for. This is the episode where we tell you what we, the geeks, and you, the listeners, decided were worthy of inclusion on the final ballot for the Best of 2019 Awards, the best heroes, the best villains, the best creators, the best comics, all that stuff. We're going to be floating our choices out to you tonight, and we will also be floating your own choices back to you to see, which comics and creators made the final slate of nominees to be voted upon for the awards a couple of weeks hence.
And unlike the Academy Awards, this only happens at 6 a.m. Eastern if you really want it to.
It can happen at any time of the day or night you want, folks.
Exactly. Yep. Looking forward to giving our nominations, which will be happening in a little bit of a while. But first, we'll get into a couple of items that we would like to address while Chris Eberly is dealing with some issues off-site. He'll be joining us momentarily, and then once he does, we will get into our full choices for the best of. Number one, it is still pretty much the beginning of the new year, even if it is approaching March. And as part of that, it's time to have a little bit of a donation drive here on Comic Geek Speak. As those of you who have been listening to the show are probably aware, we don't really have sponsorships for the show at this particular moment. And in order to keep the lights on things like the forums and the website and the studio, for that matter, it takes a little bit of cheddar to keep that up and running. And we're not asking for a lot. We're asking for, whatever you guys can give. And if you do indeed want to contribute to the show, you can do so over at comicgeekspeak.com/donate. It's right there on the website. comicgeekspeak.com/donate.php is the full address. And it's linking right to our PayPal right from there. You can do a one-time donation, a monthly donation, or whatever else you want to do. And we are going to have some other options further down the road on ways to donate. But for now, this is the simplest way to do it. And just to ensure that, we were able to keep things up and running and make things as smooth as possible for you, the listeners. So comicgeekspeak.com/donate.php if you want to contribute to the show monetarily. We do appreciate it.
Yes, we certainly do. So consider this the PBS pledge drive for CGS this year. Only we're not going to be quite as obtrusive as that institution is on public television, and there are no tote bags involved. Sorry to say.
Yeah. I asked for tote bags, and I was basically shot down. So I can take the fall for that one. People didn't want my face on something, so what are you going to do?
We may find other less tangible incentives for you later on down the line.
Yes, indeed. The other thing that we want to address a little bit is the elephant in the room news-wise in the world of comic books since the last time that we recorded. We had a week break there. As DC Comics is no longer the place of work for Mr. Dan Didio. Comic book veteran, was there for over 10 years. and he is now no longer the co-publisher of DC Comics. It's kind of weird to say.
Well, to all things an end, it was bound to happen sometime. But it still feels strange because this is very late breaking news for us. I mean, we're recording this on the 24th, just like 3 days after the story broke. But yeah, it's he's been a fixture there at DC for, I believe, 17 years now, if I've got my timeline correct. And to be honest, I know I'm not alone in this. I've not always been the fondest of Dan's managerial style. Some of the creative and marketing decisions for which he was responsible, I did not agree with or like very much. But one thing that I think I need to remain mindful of, we all need to be mindful of, and I think we probably will be in the weeks and months to come when we discover who is replacing Dan in his position and what their agenda will be. Say what you will about Dan Didio, he did at least love comics. He wanted to be in there and to be a part of that world to help DC and its product succeed as much as he could.
Oh, sure. Yeah. No, absolutely. And I mean, that was apparent from every single time he spoke at a convention, from every single time he wrote on the internet, from every single time he, would write an article that would get published in a DC comic. And frankly, even when he would write comics themselves, I mean, to be entirely frank, I have not been that big a fan of his writing. But I did enjoy him on Superboy back in the day. There was only a 6-issue run from issues 94 to 100 near the end of Superboy's tenure as a solo book. That would be the Connor Kent version of the character. But he's worked on Metal Men, and he had a lot to do with the DC Comics newspaper that came out.
Oh, Wednesday Comics, yeah.
Yeah, Wednesday Comics, yeah, which I thought was a very smart move at the time. It was different, it was unique, and it's like it had its own basic personality to it that you were not getting from comic books at the time. Just short little strips, all done by excellent creators and amazing artists, and innovation like that is something that we can definitely thank Dan Didio for during his tenure with DC. Even if there were things we didn't agree with, which. I'm there with you too, Murd. I mean, the New 52 was a bit rough,
yeah,
at initial launch.
Yeah, we can't put all the blame on Didio's shoulders for that either.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it was editorial in general, and just not 100% knowing the direction that characters themselves were going to be going after this, as it was both a hard reboot and a soft reboot. So it's kind of like. Very difficult to mesh those two things together. But still, his passion was always there. And I'm going to miss that in one form or another. And this was very sudden. We do not know the reason why he was let go. Because from everything that I've been reading online, he was indeed let go, that this was not his decision to leave. And I'm sure we'll get further information upon it in the next couple of weeks as to, the reasoning behind it. And, like you said, Murd, who's going to be taking over. As of now, it's just Jim Lee there as a sole publisher of DC Comics. And, just wherever the company goes next, it'll be, we'll be waiting and willing to see where that's going to go.
Yep. I'm sure a question on a lot of DC readers' lips is the 5G project still going to happen?
Yeah, and will it get a better name than 5G?
I've kind of been hoping all along that was just a placeholder name.
Yeah, you and me both, because I mean, especially working in the tech industry, 5G means something very specific to me.
Yeah.
It's a freaking it's a cell phone term.
Right.
It's very every single time I even hear it mentioned in conjunction with this DC project, I think to myself, are the superheroes getting better service? Is that part of this right here?
They are owned by AT&T now, after all.
Yeah, I know. Which, in and of itself, made me think this has to be a snarky term that they started using because of the fact that AT&T now owns the company. Because AT&T 5G is being rolled out across the country. So DC 5G, I guess that's rolling out too.
Yeah, it might be rolling right out the door. We too soon to say. But,
Yeah.
Yep. So, yep, Dan Didio, we hardly knew ye. You were probably a better marketer than you were a creator, but at least you were a marketer who really believed in his product. And we thank you for that. And we thank you for all the good times at the DC Nation panels at conventions and whatnot over the years. You were really in your element there. Yep. I can't really say I'm shedding too many tears over his departure, but I'm sorry it has to be under these circumstances, and I'm just kind of on the edge of my seat to find out what's going to replace him. I was reminded when I first heard the news. Oh, sorry, Ian, go ahead.
Oh, no. Please go right ahead.
Okay. When I first heard the news, I was reminded of a fable that I read out of a very old storybook at my grandparents' house. It was called The Story of King Log and King Stork. It was about a group of frogs living in a pond someplace who entreated the gods to send them a king. So the gods sent them, threw a log into their pond, kind of like a do-nothing placeholder bureaucrat type. And so the frogs were contemptuous of this ruler they'd been given, and they sat on it, and then they cried out to the gods, "Give us a better king than this inanimate object." So the gods responded this time in anger by sending them a stork, who was a bloody tyrant who actually ate the frogs and made their lives hell. So I'm just wondering if, with Didio gone, what kind of King Stork might take his place? I mean, is AT&T/Warner just going to replace him with a glorified bean counter who's going to care about nothing but profit margins and knows little about the creative aspect of things? Maybe it won't be quite as bad as I'm describing, but I've got my somewhat irrational concerns.
No, and that's justified. I mean, people were wondering and worrying about the same thing when Marvel got bought by Disney. And mind you, in some ways, those are parallel companies. Both of them are in the entertainment industry. Both of them are doing their best to try to, make things for kids as much as they are making them for adults. And, they're visual mediums. But at the same time, they're different corporate bosses. And, Disney is very much a conglomero of the industry. They own you in many different ways.
It's getting glommier all the time.
Yes, most definitely, especially now with the purchase of Fox and what have you. With AT&T, they are not really an entertainment company. They bought DirecTV I think it was about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, essentially took that for the assets and weren't really making too much entertainment out of that purchase. They were just trying to expand their empire one way or another. And the thing you can say about Dan Didio is that many people did describe him as the go-between, but also as the protector. Because as somebody who loved comic books as much as he did, he was trying to ensure that the creatives still were able to just do what they wanted to try to make good product, and that it wasn't just about the bottom line. And whether or not that's going to change now, we'll have to see. But at least from what we know as of now, Jim Lee still has a job, and Jim Lee has been in this industry a damn long time as well. And he's been he's just as passionate about comics as anybody. So it's going to be a very, very interesting couple of months here, I think. And I'd also just like to thank. I mean, I mentioned it on Facebook and on Twitter after the news, but I just wanted to thank him as well for just being an overall jovial sport, especially at conventions. And there was a time when I was attending MegaCon in 2009 with my my comic timing co-host Brent Cassina and Brendan Christopher, and we just happened to pass Dan in the hallway of the convention, and he took the time to stop and talk to us for a little while. He'd never heard of us ever, and yet he was still willing to put his voice on a podcast to try to talk some DC Comics and even had a little bit of a back and forth with us at times.
Okay, so this was on mic. This wasn't just a conversation. This was recorded.
Yep, this was on mic. Yeah, this was on mic on the floor of MegaCon 2009. And I will always be very thankful and grateful for him in that way. That it didn't really matter whether he knew you or not. He was willing to talk comics and get his voice out there and his opinions out there and his stance on DC stuff in general. So that's something I'm going to miss in some way or another.
Well, that does improve my image of the man a little bit. Know that he was willing to be that accessible.
Yeah. He also was a major part before he was with DC Comics. He was involved with the TV show Reboot for ABC.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I think he worked for ABC's animation department, and as part of that was like the overseer for Reboot, and told some amazing stories at a New York Comic Con panel I was at in 2008, celebrating the history of Reboot. About how they would get together at a club and write the stories for a season of Reboot on bar napkins, and that at least one of the characters was named after a stripper.
Oh my, yeah, those are good stories. I agree. Nice to know that a show about goings on within the realm of living computer programs have such low-tech origins.
Exactly. Yeah. So we'll see where things are going to go next, and obviously, if we get news in time for our next comic talk, then we'll be discussing it then. But for now, it's just 5G's going as planned from everything that we heard, and that Jim Lee is just going to be sole publisher and. No change in EIC either, even though you never hear Bob Harris's name mentioned. You really don't.
Perhaps just as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. But I'm sure he's, just going away and doing his job like he should be. So
Right, exactly. Regardless of whether it's of who's occupying that chair, Bob Harris or anyone else, I think that editor-in-chief is best, that editor-in-chief's least, if you know what I'm saying. His job should be, I guess occasionally he needs to step forward and be a figurehead for the company, but I think the less we actually hear from the editor-in-chief, the less controversial he or she makes him or herself, the better, both for said editor and for the company.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it was actually like Quesada in some ways that sort of like started the whole like spokesperson revolution for the editor-in-chief, because before then it was like you'd see like a Stan Soapbox type panel in the comics, but you really wouldn't see their voice that much at conventions or hear about their thoughts and opinions so much outside of the page. And we might be perhaps going back there a little bit, both with Marvel and with DC, because you don't really hear too much about EIC over at Marvel these days now that Quesada is no longer in that role. I know Alonso had a bit of a voice, but not nearly as vocal or long-winded at times as his predecessor was.
Oh yes, there was nothing at all understated about Joey DeCue's editorship.
You ain't kidding. Yep.
And back with us now, we have Chris Eberly.
Brethren, it's delightful to be here. I apologize for the delay, but I'm got my list and I'm ready to go.
All right.
Excellent. Now, all we need are some envelope noises. Oh, wait, no, that's for the reveal episode. I'll make sure to have an envelope handy.
I think I'll probably just sample an envelope opening noise and just play it over and over again.
We should have like 3 of them just for variety's sake. Like one manila envelope, one regular envelope, just to change it up.
Oh, right. Just open the little metal tabs. Interesting to see what kind of noise that makes on the mic.
All right. So we're ready to roll, and let's remind the listeners how this goes.
All right. Okay, so we've got 16 categories to work through here, folks. In each category, each one of the 3 of us participating geeks will reveal his respective choice for that category, and then I will reveal the listener's choice. Now, if one of us happens to overlap the listener selection, I do have a ranked list here of the greatest vote getters from the listeners, so that if one of us happens to step on the listener's toes and steal the number 1 vote getter, I can just go to the second highest vote getter for that category among the listeners, and that will become the listener's nominee. And in the event of a tie, we're just going to dump as many listener nominees as there happen to be with the same number of nominations into the listener's slot. So in some cases, we're going to have multiple nominees in each category. Ideally, there should be only 4, but in many cases, it will be more than that.
And PricewaterhouseCooper has verified all of these nominations.
Yes, kept them sealed in a mayonnaise jar underneath the back porch of Bartles and James. If Pants were here, he would. I don't know what that bit is. It's something that he likes to quote a lot. It's something from Johnny Carson's Tonight Show, and it's been far too long since I watched the syndicated reruns of that.
That's wild. That's wild.
Ha! Ha! You are correct, sir. All right, let's get down to business here, guys. We got 16 categories to get through.
Let's do it.
All right. Okay, Chris, if you would do the honors of going first, we'll go Chris, Ian, and me, and then the listeners, and then we'll just kind of rotate it, taking turns going first as we go forward here.
Murd, I'd be honored. One quick caveat, though. There's only one category I couldn't come up with an answer, and that's the first one.
Oh. Okay, then I guess we won't start with Chris this time.
Yeah, sorry about that. All the books I read, none of the books I read had a best new hero or team in it. So,
all right, no worries. Well, I almost went with the team, but instead I went with a particular character in that team, and that is Kelly Quintilla, Teen Lantern.
Oh, okay. But yeah, my choice is Gotham City Monsters.
Excellent. All right, so Kelly Quintilla is known as Teen Lantern. She is a member of the new Young Justice Squad that debuted in 2019. And what's unique about her is that for a character that is, not even officially called Teen Lantern for the most part, as that was always like the running joke, like hey, what would a Green Lantern sidekick be called? Teen Lantern? Like, hey, let's just go ahead and embrace that and make a character out of that. And that's what Kelly is. She is Bolivian, so she's a character of color. She's an 11-year-old girl who managed to hack into a Green Lantern power battery and has a device on her hand that basically harnesses the ability of the Green Lanterns without actually being a Green Lantern herself. And she's tried to dedicate her life to fighting evil and being on the side of good ever since, even though she essentially stole this power and did so from the dead body of an alien that she found in a junkyard. So it's a nebulous start, but since then, she's definitely been doing good, and there's a lot more to this character that we still have to know and learn. But I appreciate Kelly for what she is, and would love to see where this goes.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear what you've said about that character so far, Ian, because I haven't read any further than the first issue of Young Justice, although I do have the first trade on order. And I didn't think that first issue was really all that well structured, and one of the biggest problems I had with it was that Bendis just kind of tossed Teen Lantern into it and did almost nothing with her. So it's nice to know that we've got a little bit more backstory on her, and I like the sound of what you've been saying here. I look forward to learning more about Kelly once that Volume 1 trade arrives at my apartment.
Well, I look forward to you reading through it, and would love to get your further thoughts on it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I went the team route for my nominee here. A rather unusual team of champions called the Gotham City Monsters, introduced in an eponymous 6-issue miniseries that came out from DC this year, written by Steve Orlando, who is the ombudsman of the obscure at DC. He loves to dig up these really strange, deep-cut characters from years and years ago. And in this case, he just kind of threw this really eclectic bunch of monsters and misfits together into a team that functions basically as a group of heroes because they're fighting a far greater threat. They're gathered together by Frankenstein, and this is Frankenstein, Agent of Shade. This is the Grant Morrison-created take on the Frankenstein's monster, as introduced in his Seven Soldiers of Victory construct several years ago. And here we see Frankenstein putting together 7 soldiers of a very different kind to stave off an elder god figure called Melmoth, the last king of everything, who he resembles, well, if Satan were to manifest on Earth as a human-sized ventriloquist's dummy, that's basically what Melmoth looks like. And he comes to Earth planning to end it and all the multiverse with it, and he's backed up by an army of Martian mandrills and other flunkies and hench people. And he arrives in Gotham City, of all places. And Frankenstein is on the scene, and some prophecy that he digs up declares that there needs to be a team of 7 champions to take down this particular demonic foe. So Frankenstein gathers up some unlikely characters. 3 second or lower tier Bat villains, Killer Croc, Sandra Fuller, Lady Clayface, and Orca, created by Larry Hama back in the 90s during his rather brief run on the Batman series.
Remember Orca? Yep.
Oh, sure, yeah. And in addition to that, we get a brand new character, the Red Phantom, who is the ghost of a deceased actor who haunts the Magus Theater in the region of Gotham City known as Monster Town. And this is a character that Steve Orlando made up himself for the purpose. Blasted, who am I? Oh, yes, Andrew Bennett, I, Vampire. And a couple of issues into the miniseries, Batwoman, Kate Kane, joins the fun. And so this unlikely and very eclectic group have to learn how to work together as a unit and to fight the far worse and far more monstrous evil of Melmoth and his underlings. They even get to fight the Monster League of Evil somewhere along the line, which, as I've raved about on this podcast months ago, they're a group of characters that Orlando skimmed from a one-off Superman story featuring the Captain Marvel analog Captain Thunder. They're supposed to be like doppelgangers of the Monster Society of Evil, and it's just a bunch of like universal monster. There's the stereotypical vampire, mummy, wolfman, etc. So yeah, that's it. This is exactly my cup of tea. Just villains being used as protagonists. It's got the sort of spooky fun of Brereton's Nocturnals about it. Yeah, I really enjoyed that miniseries. It's a great mix of characters. It's the kind of thing that few people other than Orlando are attempting these days. So I'm happy to give them my nominee for Best New Hero Team of the Year.
Excellent.
As for the listeners, DC can claim to have a sweep in this category of the CGS Best of Awards this year because the listeners overwhelmingly chose another Bendis-created Wonder Comics character, Naomi, as their favorite new character of the year.
Nice.
And actually, the runner-up from the listeners was the Young Justice team.
Nice.
Which, as several of the listeners acknowledged, it's not composed exclusively of new characters. In fact, it's mostly old favorites in a now continuity obsolete incarnations thereof. But there are enough new characters in there that I think I would have allowed this version of Young Justice to stand as their nomination if they had gotten the greatest number of votes. But as it happens, they did not. Naomi did. So Naomi is the listener's nominee in the category of Best New Hero or Team of 2019.
I almost nominated Ginny Hex and then found out that she actually didn't premiere in 2019. She premiered in 2018. She was in one of those giant size collections first before she wound up on the team of Young Justice.
All right. Way to go, Bendis, for exhuming her.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that myself.
Neither did I until I looked it up.
Okay. And as I always like to do, let me just reel off a couple of the other vote getters from the listeners. We had a couple of nods for a character from the Assassination miniseries, F. Tarkington, one of the couple dozen of ridiculous over-the-top assassin characters that comprise the ensemble cast of that book. And F does stand for that F word, if you're wondering. Let's see, Jane Foster Valkyrie, an alternate future version of Luke Cage and Jessica Jones' daughter Danielle, who becomes Thor. Alpheus the World Forger, brother of the Monitor and Anti-Monitor from the Justice League title. Bendis' new version of the Legion. Sojourner Mullane from the alt Green Lantern series Far Sector. Black Panther's Agents of Wakanda team from Aaron's Avengers. Skulldigger and Skeleton Boy. Excellent choice there.
Oh, it's so good.
And a couple of nods also for Jawbreakers from the Comicsgate line. So there's a selection of nominees from the listeners in Best New Hero or Teen. Okay, so the slate as it stands now are Teen Lantern, Gotham City Monsters, and Naomi. Those are your nominees for Best New Hero or Team of 2019. Okay, which brings us then to Best New Villain or Team introduced in 2019. Okay, I think I'll go first this time. My nominee is going to be King Kid.
All right, Chris.
Thomas Wayne.
Oh my!
Nice. And my best new villain or team is Apex Lex.
Another very good choice.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, King Kid. This is a character that was just barely introduced in time to be included or considered for nomination. He first appeared in January of 2019 in Shazam #2, and if that book hadn't shipped late, he wouldn't have qualified at all. Because it was actually supposed to ship with a Santa Claus cover. I think it was supposed to be out in December, but instead we got it in January, so it counts. King Kid actually appeared at the end of Shazam #2. We get a little more on his backstory in issue #3 and pass him. He is a part of the Shazam and the Seven Magic Lands story that Jeff Johns has been percolating in the Shazam series. He is in control of one of the Seven Magic Lands, the Fun Lands, and he dresses in like an ermine-trimmed robe and a big crown, red and white striped leggings, turquoise hair, and as a scepter he carries what he calls his wishing stick, which looks like a big gold candy cane studded with jewels. Though something tells me in another era, another time, and another place, it looked like a rod with a little triangle at the top with an ibis symbol in the middle of it. In other words, it's the mystical ibis stick that empowered Ibis the Invincible, the classic Fawcett Comics Golden Age character. But in King Kid's questionable hands, it basically brings his every childish whim to reality. And he rules with I don't want to say iron fist exactly, hard candy fist perhaps, over the Funlands, which is just this giant amusement park, which he operates for the good of displaced children everywhere. He likes to rescue foundling children and bring them to the Funlands to live out their childhood days in joy. It's kind of eerily similar to Pleasure Island from Disney's Pinocchio. And I've got kind of a spotty history with that concept myself. It sort of scarred me for life. Maybe that's one of the reasons why I find King Kid as threatening as I do, and why I think he makes such a good villain. But he runs this place, and it's just full of amusement park rides and malt shops, and there's a giant picture book library. There's all kinds of stuff for kids to do, just to have fun all the time. The catch, though, is once they turn 18, like King Kid's secret police, like a bunch of creepy clown automatons, come after them, grab them, and abduct them down to the bowels of the Funlands, the inner workings, like the sweatshops below, where they're forced to operate this big, heavy machinery and toil until they die, so to operate the amusement park above, so that the kids can continue to have a good time on the lethal toil of the adults that are held captive down below. So King Kid, he's kind of a monster. We learned that he used to be he was born in the Middle Ages. He was a peasant boy who ran away from home, from his abusive dirt farming father and his cottage, and found his way to the Funlands and took control there. And now he's a child forever, thanks to his wishing stick. And he has designs on becoming the 7th member of the Shazam family. So that's why he brings the Shazam family down to the Funlands and wines and dines them and tries to convince them to let him join their group. And then he turns kind of nasty when they decline his offer to join their ranks. Maybe it's just the similarity of the Funlands to Pleasure Island, and just the horrifying fate that awaits children once they've lived too long on Sugar Mountain, as it were, and are then abducted down below and put to work. I think he's an interesting figure. I think he would have in a slightly modified form, he would have been too far out of place in the Golden Age stories of the Captain Marvel family. And on top of that, I just wanted to throw a nomination of some kind to the ongoing Shazam series, which, despite it's not being my favorite preferred take on the original Captain Marvel and his kin, I think it's actually quite good, and it leans it's my preferred flavor of fantasy adventure, shall we say. It actually literally incorporates the marvelous land of Oz into these 7 magic lands. So I'm kind of putting King Kid in here as an ambassador from that series into my nominations for the Best of the 2019 awards. So King Kid, that's my favorite villain of the year.
I'm glad you worked Oz into it somehow.
Yep, I find a way, and this time Jeff Johns made it easy.
Well, that was actually a terrifying description of
right.
Just I'm always go into those stories where they have this facade that seems so benevolent, then they tear that away, and it's just a horror show. And you demonstrated that quite effectively with that description.
Mm-hmm. Yep, just imagine a land ruled by a person who has the personality of a perpetual adolescent. Imagine how horrible that would be.
I can fully imagine how horrible that would be.
Mm-hmm.
Believe me. All right, my next?
You are.
Okay, so Thomas Wayne. Now, Tom King recently wrapped up his epic run on Batman. I'm looking forward to the inevitable omnibus collection. And one of the great sort of conceits he submitted to that storyline was that he took the Thomas Wayne Batman from the what's the name of that New 52 story?
Flashpoint originally. Right?
Flashpoint, yeah.
The button, sorry, what you're thinking of.
Yeah, but the Thomas Wayne character from Flashpoint, who ultimately, while a very dark character, was ultimately seen as a heroic character, sort of meeting his fate when that universe vanished and so forth. And for events that I won't go into because I want people to read the story, I don't want to spoil too much, he's sort of brought into our Bruce's universe, and for a variety of circumstances ends up becoming a deadly adversary to his son from this alternate reality, essentially. These are some of the most powerful Batman stories I've read in quite a long time. I mean, it's Bruce fighting sort of this extremely damaged, diabolical version of his father, and it's in the hands of Tom King. So you're in for quite a. It's a real exploration of the psyche of the Batman and Bruce Wayne and what he deals with when he faces, in some ways, his most dangerous opponent, who happens to be this version of his father that just has gone completely off the rails, for reasons they get into, of course, in the story. But it's such a personal story. It's such a personal take on a Batman villain as no other. It couldn't be this way for any other type of Batman villain. And what Thomas Wayne actually does, what he's involved in, the consequences of it are very devastating for Bruce and his world. And again, no one does it better than this with this kind of story than Tom King. So that's my choice.
Nice. Yeah. Sometime before in the next 5 years, I'll have caught up on Batman and actually be able to read more of that. So when that happens, I'll make sure to let you guys know what I thought. But I'm waiting.
Well, Eenie Poo. That's why, again, I don't want to go into. I don't mean to be vague.
Oh yeah.
In any kind of annoying way for people. I want people who haven't experienced the story to really dig into it.
Yep. Awesome. All right. And my best new villain was Apex Lex of Justice League, originally premiering in Justice League number 27. I'm finally working my way through this amazing Justice League series by Scott Snyder that, to me, encapsulates everything I loved about Justice League Unlimited, the animated series, and basically combines that with the feel of the Justice League comic.
Oh, that was a great series, man.
It's terrific. And this character of Apex Lex is supposed to be like the perfect version of a human that was created by Perpetua. who is a villain that was introduced in the year of the villain storyline, who's supposed to be the mother of sorts to the Monitor and the Anti-Monitor. It's a long story, and I won't bother to get into it because I'd be sitting here for 25 minutes trying to explain it all. But this version of Lex Luthor is in some ways creepier than Lex Luthor has ever been, because he doesn't even seem like he's mad or evil most of the time. He's very calm about what he's doing, and what he's doing is at times, murdering members of the Justice League. I won't say who, and getting about his evil schemes with the Legion of Doom, and he's essentially become an underling of Perpetua in this process, and views her almost as a mother as well, for imbuing him with these abilities. And it's a very unique and different take on Lex Luthor that, to go back to Justice League cartoon one more time, reminds me a little bit of when Lex merged with Brainiac, and just the amount of power that oozed out of him at that point. And that's very much the type of character that Lex Luthor has become. He's really just never been this powerful and scary before, and it took Scott Snyder to pull it off. So, yeah, it's not the businessman Lex that I usually love. It's a very different type, and I'm all here for it. So, yeah, Apex Lex is my choice.
Yeah, totally feel that choice, Ian. Yeah, that's the scariness you're talking about. It does radiate off the page, and it's not just because Lex is not biologically human anymore. He's got that washed out, pale skin and that shark-like aspect to him. But it's what you said. The fact that he's got that eerily calm aspect to him. He's not angry. He just has the self-assurance of a fanatic. He's completely embraced the philosophy of doom as a cosmic absolute. He's just so self-assured that everything that he's doing is not only right but preordained and needs to happen and will and must happen, that there's no need for him to show any kind of emotional involvement in the horrible, unspeakable acts he's committing. So that's... Yeah, it is not businessman Lex. It's not mad scientist Lex. It's cosmic zealot Lex, and that would be the scariest Lex of all.
Yeah, most definitely.
All right, so those are our choices. The listeners, however, there's going to be a 4-way tie from the listeners. So there's going to be 7 nominees for Best New Villain or Team of 2019. The tie was between the following 4. The Overseer was introduced in Dan Slott's Fantastic Four series this year. The Horde Culture, who are characters from the... You probably recognize that name, Ian. They come from the X-Men comics of this year, the whole Dawn of X initiative.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting. Apparently they're basically the Golden Girls, except they're rampaging criminal plant collectors. So they're like gardening grannies with a real mean streak. And they show up on Krakoa to gather botanical samples, and they take no crap from any mutant they find there.
B. Arthur could have pulled that off.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Without breaking a sweat. The other 2 are Batman the Grim Knight, who was introduced as a part of this whole infected bunch of stories involving the Dark Multiverse this year. And from Marvel, Star, a character introduced in the Captain Marvel series, and who got her own spin-off just not too long ago. So we've got those 4 characters. They will all appear on characters and or teams. They will all appear on the ballot alongside our 3 choices, Thomas Wayne, Apex Lex, and King Kid. All right. Now we move on to the Best New Comic of 2019. First issue shipping during that calendar year. All right, Chris, I think it is your turn to start us off this time.
Honored, my friend. Terry Moore's 5 Years.
Surprising absolutely nobody, Young Justice.
And my choice may come as something of a surprise, but Vampirella.
No surprise at all, Mark, because I believe Christopher Priest is the scripter on that series.
You are absolutely right, Chris.
And I've not read it yet, so I look forward to your assessment.
Hopefully I'll whet your appetite. But
no doubt. All right, so There's not much to say here. It's Terry Moore, one of the living masters of the medium, in my humble opinion. A master creator who can both write and draw, and he does it all. And he's returning to, I guess you call it his Moreverse at this point. All his characters, of course, most importantly, the Kachu and Francine from Strangers in Paradise. And he weaves together all the characters from Rachel Rising, Echo, Strangers in Paradise. What was the other one? Is it, Motor Girl?
Yes. I believe so.
Yeah. Brings those characters together into a world-spanning, global threat. And I know that may sound melodramatic, but in his hands, because he weaves in plot threads from all these different characters and series that he's done, and he brings together to deal with something that, in the context of that world, makes perfect sense. And as anything Terry Moore does, he never forgets to emphasize the humanity and the human moments of each of these characters in their lives, and how they try to deal with their own private lives and what's important, while still balancing these major events they're getting drawn into. I think Terry Moore is one of the greatest pencilers working in comics. I think he's one of the greatest writers, if not. He's for me, he's like right up there with writers like Brian K. Vaughan. I mean, he's a master. And it may be the culmination of all of his work. I'm not sure if he can do anything beyond this, but if you've read and enjoyed his characters, then this is a series you really should check out. 5 years.
Yeah, I'm woefully not really read much Terry Moore. It's one of my blind spots.
So right now, Ian, Jamie D is making one of his patented loving but judgmental noises.
I actually just heard him say the words "come on." Yeah, but everything you guys have been saying about it sounds like it would be up my alley. So
whenever you want to borrow the Strangers in Paradise omnibus, let me know and I'll lend it to you.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'm actually in your boat there, Ian, and Jamie's going to groan even harder at me because I have his copies of Strangers in Paradise, and I haven't finished reading them. So that's the most basic. I mean, those are the characters that kind of form the story spine of 5 years. Although
exactly,
a lot of his other creations are in there as well. But I've still been buying 5 years, and I've been flipping through the issues, and it's his trademark storytelling. To the extent that I'm familiar with said trademark storytelling, having read as little of his work as I have. But yeah, I'm kind of in your boat there, Ian, but this was not something that I wanted to miss. It's kind of like getting all the Terry Moore that I haven't read yet together in one like super blasted smoothie of more goodness.
It's like Terry Moore's Exiles, basically. In some ways. Getting a whole bunch of characters from other series together and traversing from the sounds of it.
Yeah.
All right. So my best new comic again, shocking absolutely nobody, was Young Justice. To steal a phrase from Chris, I'm sure I've talked about it, ad nauseum or infinitum, depending on your point of view. So I'm not going to talk about it too much here, since you've all heard me say it before. It's just I've been waiting for years for Young Justice to be back. It is back, and it feels like Young Justice. It doesn't feel like somebody took the name and didn't actually get the personality down. Bendis has gotten that. He's proven to write teen characters before, and he's doing so again very, very well here. It is one of those series that seems to actually just be building and getting better as it goes on. The entire arc that took place, amongst the multiverse was great, and now we're getting more characters from Wonder Comics showing up in the pages of the series as time goes on, with Dial H showing up, and Naomi and the Wonder Twins all taking place in the latest issues. So yeah, I'm loving what's going on. And I'm glad to have it back, and I will be on for the long haul, no matter how long this series lasts. So yeah, Young Justice is my pick.
Look forward to the arrival of that trade.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and I went a little bit beyond the big two here, anyway, and I'm happy to do that because most of what I sample a lot of different things from different publishers. It doesn't always make an impression on me, but this is a happy exception. Vampirella, the new series, as Chris said, it's written by Priest, who's an uber favorite of his and a favorite of all the rest of us as well. And he's working his magic on another somewhat difficult character. Vampirella was not one that not a character that Priest knew much about or was that interested in, but that was one of the reasons why he accepted the assignment in the first place, to challenge himself a bit, to build a version of Vampirella that spoke to him and that he was through which he would be able to say something. And his take on Vampirella, who, depending on how she's been written in the past, has been something of a cipher. She's a lady with exhibitionist tendencies who comes from the planet Draculon, where everybody drinks a liquid analogous to human blood to survive. And his take on her is that this whole Vampirella thing is like she had a life as a human being, like the daughter of a wealthy family. She was involved in a plane crash which gave her amnesia. And the framing device for the whole thing, and this is a very Priest convention here, she is in conversation with a therapist who's been assigned to her. And this therapist is quite a colorful character. It's like he walked right out of the Dave Chappelle show. And he calls himself Doc Carey because it rhymes with Doctari, that old 60s heroic veterinarian in Africa series. And apparently this character was a fan of that as a kid. And he's talking to Vampirella, and he's just saying, crazy white girl having hallucinations. And he's not really buying anything that she has to say. So she's kind of a foil for her as she sits there calmly telling him all these ridiculous, impossible things about herself. So there's that. She's involved in a same-sex relationship with somebody, and there's like a third wheel who's enrolled in a theological college of witchcraft, who just kind of hangs around and makes sarcastic remarks about Vampirella and her girlfriend. And they fight this group of killer nuns, and it's interesting stuff, and it's got that Priest satirical edge. Or he's using it to make. He doesn't allow this to dominate. The commentary doesn't trump the story. Is what I'm trying to say here, but it is present, and he's using his skills to make this character more interesting to me than she's ever been before, and certainly more interesting to himself at the same time, I'm sure. And on the art side of things, the artwork is really impressing me. It's by a Turkish artist named, you'll have to excuse me here because I know nothing whatsoever about Turkish phonology. I think it might be pronounced Erwin Gündüz. It's spelled Ergunduz with umlauts over everything. He's I don't think I've seen any of his artwork before, but it's really gorgeous. And he does all his own coloring too, which is more gorgeous still. It's pretty detailed stuff. You can just see the blood and gore seeping off the page out at you, and you remark to yourself at its beauty as it does so. So so artistically and on the writing end, it's a quality product, and it's been a pretty big success for Dynamite too. The first issue was the biggest selling regular priced single issue in the history of Dynamite Entertainment. I think they put out some like 25-cent promotional issues a while ago that may have sold better, but this is the first time that a comic at regular cover price has sold as many copies as this one has for Dynamite. So people are taking notice, and deservedly so. It is a good series, and it's a good and worthy new take on a character that's it lends a little bit more substance and gravitas to a character best known for her visual dimension, shall we say. So it's a success, and I'm happy to make it my nominee in the category of best new comic for this year.
Well, Murd, I just ordered the trade, so as we speak,
done.
So I look forward to discussing that with you.
Yep, I don't think you'll be disappointed, Chris. It's Priest from start to finish.
No, I won't be.
Yep, it's got the little chapter title cards at the beginning of each sequence, just like as a Priest always does.
Yep.
Let's see, and the listeners agreed with Chris that they thought 5 Years was the best new series of the year, but the close runner-up was Bendis's new Legion of Superheroes title. So that is going to be the listener's nominee in this category. Right, so
All right.
your final slate then for Best New Comic of 2019 will be 5 Years, Young Justice, Vampirella, and Bendis' Legion. Let's see, some other things that got nominations from the listenership. The new Conan the Barbarian series coming out through Marvel.
That was excellent. Yep. That was an excellent series.
Let's see. I have the Roy Thomas and Alan Davis issue. Don't know which number that was, but that was one thing I wasn't going to miss. Little Bird, the new Black Cat comic, Once and Future, Doctor Doom, the new thing by Christopher Cantwell.
Excellent series.
Hellblazer, Sea of Stars, Faithless, Fair Lady, Undiscovered Country, Dragonfly and Dragonfly Man, the latest volume of Daredevil, Invaders, and a couple of nods for one of your favorites, Ian, Die.
Nice.
Yeah. So those are some things that the listeners were voting for. And I forgot to run down some of the things they were nominating for Best Villain, but they liked, for example, Countess Belzebeth from Grant Morrison's Black Stars miniseries. This is the alternate reality Green Lantern thing. Null, God of the Symbiotes from Absolute Carnage and all that Venom-related stuff, also popped up in Silver Surfer Black. The Scrambler of the League of Annoyances from Wonder Twins. The new owner of the Daily Planet, Marisol Leone. One person voted for the Charles Xavier and his X-Men. The Plastic Men, P-L-A-S-S-Tic Men, the Nazi Plastic Men from Freedom Fighters. Victor Freeze's wife, and The Deceased. Some things that got some listener love there. Okay, now we move on to the Best Limited Series. Nominees in which category must have ended during a final issue published during calendar year 2019. Okay, Ian, it's your turn to start us off.
All right. To pull the slightest bit of a Shane cheat, my Best Limited Series is House of X / Powers of 10.
All right. Mine is going to be The Wrong Earth.
Mine is Spider-Man Life Story.
See? And that's why I didn't nominate it, because I knew you were going to.
I kind of saw that one coming.
I'm going to give you a manly embrace next time I see you.
All right. So, like I said, I'm giving a little bit of a Shane cheat, but they're so tightly, together that it's hard to nominate one without nominating the other.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, the House of X Powers of 10 was a revelation. I just didn't realize how much I was missing the X-Men until Jonathan Hickman gave me something so different and so engaging, while at the same time still feeling like the X-Men, that I was in all over again. It's everything he did for the Avengers back in the day, everything he did for Fantastic Four, just with an X-Men coat of paint this time around. It's weird at times. It's revelatory, but also it's outright engaging and entertaining. And I hadn't felt this way since the beginning of Bendis' run with the X-Men and Uncanny X-Men. And this miniseries, the way the Powers of 10 went from different eras of the X-Men, from the beginning to the middle to quote unquote the end, and House of X then built the world of Krakoa for Jonathan Hickman to play with in his ongoing series, was just fantastic, and I just enjoy it so very much, and had to give it the nom.
Now, Ian, has any of this been traded yet? Because I want to read it in trade.
I am almost certain it has at this point. I'm going to double check that on Amazon. But yeah, no, it's let's see, House of X, Powers of X. There is a combined House of X, Powers of X hardcover. Okay. That's currently available on Amazon, and it's also available digitally right now for a significant discount, to the point where you can get House of X, Powers of X for like $15 right now. And I
can also check my library too.
Yes, you can. Yep.
So, because I've only read like the first issue of House of X, I really enjoyed it. And you've been giving such a great testimonial for this title. And I've loved the X-Men my whole life. I fell off of them quite a few years ago, though. So I'm looking forward to getting back into it.
Oh yeah, definitely. And the art too was superb throughout the series. So it's 12 issues altogether with House of X and Powers of 10, and it's so worth the read.
Well, one of my favorite things about doing these awards every year is that it's a chance to sort of dial ourselves in to the CGS collective hive mind and find out what cool reads we've been missing out on. And the biggest takeaway in that regard that I've gotten from going through the listener nominations this year is that the whole Dawn of X initiative that Hickman started up at Marvel this year really hit the mark. It delivered. And as if your constant accolades for it, Ian, were not enough. The listeners definitely agree. So yeah, as soon as that comes out in soft cover, I'll definitely be giving it a look.
Definitely. Yep. Hopefully that will not be too soon from now.
All right. My choice for best miniseries concluding in 2019 is kind of a carryover from 2018. It features the character parenthesis S and parenthesis. It's kind of two characters, but also kind of one character that I nominated as best new hero or team of 2018. And now I'm able to nominate the series in which that character/characters appeared. The Wrong Earth, written by Tom Peyer, with art by our good friends Jamal Eigel and Juan Castro, with help from Gary Erskine. It was the debut offering from the new publisher Ahoy Comics, beginning back in 2018. And it's basically the story of a Batman analog of two Earths. One, like Earth Alpha, Earth Omega. One of them is this sunshiny, campy, go-go 60s type Silver Agey Batman, like Adam West. And he's called Dragonfly Man. And his gritty, blood-soaked 80s counterpart from Earth Omega is the Dragonfly. And thanks to a scheme gone awry perpetrated by Dragonfly/Dragonfly Man's arch-nemesis number one, the two versions of Dragonfly/Man end up on each other's Earths, in each other's milieu. And so the smiley, chummy, paternal authority figure Dragonfly Man has to find his way through the dystopian, blasted urban landscape of his Earth Omega counterpart, whereas the murderous vigilante Dragonfly has to make sense of the the Silver Age version of reality in which he's been thrust. It's good fun. There's also there's different versions of number one and the other members of the two heroes' respective rogues galleries. It's just a fun mutual fish out of water story. Also, it's a parallel Earth crossover story, which is my bread and butter totally, and well told by one of my favorite underappreciated writers, Tom Peyer, and of course the artwork. It's by our friend Jamal, and even if he weren't our friend, he's still a talented brother. He's great, and he got some great help on the inks from Juan Castro. So yeah, it's a quality package, and it's already received a sequel from Ahoy Comics, which is coming out as we speak. Dragonfly and Dragonfly Man, which is more stories of these two parallel Earth versions of the same character in their native habitats. We got to see them getting by in each other's worlds. Now we're getting to see what they can do, in their own native terra firma soil. So, yeah, yes, it's a great story from some great creators. I'm happy to make it my nominee for Best Limited Series.
Yep, and I'm very glad you did, because I'd kind of forgotten that it ended in 2019. Or else it very well may have been on my radar as well. So I'm glad that you remembered that, Bird.
Yeah, it is one of the problems with having this rule in place, which actually goes back to the Rios administration. Yes, to be eligible, a series has to have ended in a certain year. So it kind of leaves those miniseries that straddle the boundary between years at a disadvantage. Like, for example, the Freedom Fighters maxi series. Every issue of that but number 12, I believe, came out in 2019. So now if we could very well forget about that one issue by the time we have to put together next year's nominations. We might forget that Freedom Fighters and other series like it are eligible.
Put a reminder on your Google Calendar to remind you to nominate it for next year, or something like that.
Yes, I will get right on using that thing I don't know how to use, Ian.
Or buy next year's calendar and put it on it yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. Chris, tell us about Spider-Man Life Story.
Okay, so I raved about this series multiple times. Basically, as each issue came out last year, we talked about it on the air. Again, I don't want to spoil it too much for people who haven't read it yet, but suffice it to say, I even though I've loved Spider-Man since I was a child, I mean, he's, besides Black Panther, probably my favorite superheroic character. But I really have fallen away from the character for quite a few years. I hadn't been reading his titles consistently for quite some time. And when this story came out, first of all, the creative team, Zdarsky and Mark Bagley, doing probably some of the greatest work of his career, and that's saying something. That drew me in. And the concept, which is, what if Spider-Man aged? I mean, the concept is very simple, but what they do with that, they start with him as a teen in the 60s and like in college and all that, and then they take you from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s. And, a lot of the history, the Spider-Man history, you're familiar with, all the characters, that's all there. But obviously it goes in a different direction because it's finite. There's an end. And it's one of the most moving, let's say one of those moving stories I've read of an iconic character that you're accustomed to never really truly aging or undergoing any, sort of transformative changes because they got to keep bringing it back to the basics for the corporate property. This story, but at the end of it, I was jumping up and down just at how good this story was. And if you love Spider-Man and you love his world, he's one of the best supporting casts in comics, one of the best rogues galleries in comics. The essence of all of that is there in this story. If you like any age you grew up reading Spider-Man, with Silver, Bronze Age, Copper, and on, there's something in there for people from every era who enjoyed the character. And if you've been following Spider-Man the whole way, either because you've been alive that long or you just made the point of going back and reading everything, you're especially going to love this. It's one of the best Spider-Man stories I've ever read, and that's saying something.
Completely agree on every single level, Chris. It's just it just gave me such joy to read, and it's sort of a what if in the way that it's put together, exactly the way that you said, what if he aged, but at the same time, just take it for what it is and just enjoy that for the way that they even incorporate other characters.
Yes.
Like Iron Man and
Captain America
and
Reed Richards. Yep.
Yeah, so stupendous series.
Yeah, there's a real, and you made a good point, Ian, about the other characters. There's a real poignancy to everything because they're aging. You see the consequences of choices different characters made that have real weight because these characters will eventually die and get old, and it's one of the best Spider-Man stories I've ever read.
And that is saying something. All right. And what I'm saying now is that the two of you are really on the listener's wavelength here, or they are on yours. Take it as you will. Because the listeners got themselves into a two-way tie for first place vote getter in this category. And the two miniseries that were tied for first place are the two that you guys nominated.
Nice.
Yep. So Life Story and House of X / Powers of 10. And, the listeners tend to nominate those, jointly or interchangeably as you did, Ian. And I think this is one instance in which it's perfectly legitimate to have a dual nominee here. So it is going to go on the ballot for your nomination as both of those things, House and Powers. But as for the listener's own nominee, the runner-up behind those two in deadlock for first place is actually DC's Doomsday Clock, which finally concluded in 2019.
Yeah, that might have been my pick had I read all 12 issues.
Yeah, a lot of people are telling me that it was worth the wait, that the payoff was worth it.
All right,
I guess
I'll believe him. I'll sit down sometime next week. In fact, you know what? I have a long bus ride up to Boston for me on Friday, so maybe I'll load up all 12 issues and read them that way.
Ooh, is it PAX time?
It is PAX time. It is
All
indeed.
right.
Yep, I'll be there Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
All right, may Dr. Manhattan go with you. All right. So, other things that the listeners nominated. Actually, the second runner-up was the Deceased event, sort of their take on the Marvel Zombies concept over at the DC Universe. Some other things, the Life and Death of Toyo Harada from Valiant, the Black Hammer Justice League crossover from Dark Horse, the Black Hammer Age of Doom miniseries, Kieran Gillen's Peter Cannon Thunderbolt miniseries for Dynamite, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, The Tempest, which is supposed to be Alan Moore's swan song on comics for a while, Assassination, Electric Warriors, something called Murder Falcon, Clue Candlestick from IDW. That's a couple of nominations here, a little bit of a surprise. G.I. Joe, Sierra Muerte by Michelle Fife, Female Furies from DC, etc. So there you are. But the four official nominees in this category are Spider-Man Life Story, House of X / Powers of 10, The Wrong Earth, and Doomsday Clock. All right, so from the limited to the singular, the best single issue or one-shot of 2019. I'll go first this time. My choice is Justice League number 22.
Okay. I get to dominate something that just happened to have started in December. Its first issue just came out. 20XX number 1.
Ooh.
My choice is the Marvel's Epilogue.
Oh. All right. All right, so Justice League number 22. This is a part of that epic Scott Snyder run on that title, to which Ian alluded when he nominated Apex Lex as the best new villain of the year. And he said he didn't want to get into too many particulars because it would take 3 hours just to explain it all. Well, this issue probably did most of the heavy lifting of that 3-hour explanation, all in one 32-page comic. It is entitled The First Crisis. And it is just this glorious DC cosmology info dump, which does, I think, a pretty solid job, and this is coming from a semi-pro crisisologist here, of tying together all the different permutations of DC Comics' multiversal continuity, and the many times it's been rebooted and so forth. It's pulling the cosmic camera back still further and showing us a different, like the origin behind the origin behind the origin. It's a story that tries to make sense of all the different reboots and retconned explanations of those reboots that have taken place at DC over the years. And it reveals that even before the multiverse that we tend to think of as the original DC multiverse, the one that began with, like New Fun Comics in 1935. Or would that be more fun? Well, either way. Before the DC multiverse that we all came to know and love, the one that began with the schism of the one universe into many and the birth of the Monitor and the Anti-Monitor and so forth, it turns out that the Monitor and Anti-Monitor had been born even before that. And Perpetua, the aforementioned Perpetua, like the cosmic creator goddess of all things in DC reality. She was the one who created the original multiverse, and it was not a happy place. It was filled with pale white and extremely aggressive and pugnacious creatures like Apex Lex. What Lex Luthor became when he became Apex Lex was what baseline humanity was supposed to be. Like the original multiverse that Perpetua created was supposed to be just a whole multiverse full of nothing but those nasties, which she was then going to use as an army to attack the over-beings that were sort of a couple of steps even above Perpetua herself in the cosmic hierarchy. And it's just a story about how her children, the Monitor, the Anti-Monitor, and Alpheus, the World Forger, turned against her and sent her into darkness and precipitated the birth of the original DC multiverse as we think of it. And how then that multiverse proceeded to die and be reborn and die and be reborn. And it ties together all kinds of different strands from the original crisis, from subsequent crises, even from more recent things like, Scott Snyder's own Dark Knight's Metal, even a couple of things thrown in there from Final Crisis and Countdown. I think there's some mention made of how the monitors were briefly splintered into like multiple, like a whole race of monitor beings instead of just the one. So it does kind of a yeoman's job of continuity and retconning, and it's the sort of stuff that I live for as a DC Universe fan. It's something that's going to get, if I have my way, and God willing, and the weather's clear, sometime several years down the line, when Peter and I get to that point, we'll pick this apart as part of the Crisis Tape spin-off podcast. But it was one comic that has really stuck in my mind as being a joy to read and just consume when it came out, and it's a good representative of all the really cool DC Comics history and concepts that Snyder is throwing together and recombining as he builds toward the grand guignol conclusion of his Justice League Doom War story. So yeah, I'm singling that out as my favorite single issue of the year.
And by the way, Murd, it is new fun #1.
All right, thank you, Chris. It does make sense for new fun to come before more fun, I guess. You have to have some fun before you can have more fun.
That's a fair assessment. All right, so 20XX #1 is the first issue of Jonathan Luna's new series, and he's co-writing it with Lauren Keeley. I believe this is the first work that she's done in comics. And it's set in a not too distant future where a virus has broken out and killed off a large amount of the population. And one of two things happens when you get this virus. You either get the virus and die, or you survive and then wind up with telekinesis. The virus basically becomes like an inactive symbiote in your brain and winds up unlocking the power of telekinesis for your life. And anyone who survives this is immediately like a pariah to society, and they're looked at almost in the way that you would look at mutants in the Marvel universe. And the main character of this series, Miria, was one of those individuals who contracted the virus and winds up almost dying and then survives, and then afterwards winds up trying to find her cousin who also went through this process and winds up getting into something that's way bigger than either her cousin or herself in the process. It's done entirely in black and white, and Jonathan Luna does the art on it, and it completely has me sold after this first issue. And it came out in December of 2019, which allowed it to be nominated for this particular awards series. And I'm going to continue to read it and hope that the rest of the series drives it home just as well as this first issue did. So 20XX numero uno is my choice.
Bueno.
All right, so Marvel's Epilogue, I talked about this when it came out, and I read it. I mean, for me, it's very simple. It's Kurt Busiek and Alex Ross reuniting to tell another story in their Marvel's universe, so to speak, that classic sort of respectful reimagining of the dawn of the Marvel universe that came out in the 1990s. It was one of the real bright spots for me as a comic book reader in the 1990s. I had not really experienced Kurt Busiek's scripting or Alex Ross's art prior to that, and it had a profound impact on me, especially because it brought to life my love of that history and how they respected it, but also sort of went to the gutters, so to speak, and brought out other aspects and other perspectives. And here they're doing that again, just a story based around the new X-Men, the Claremont Cockrum X-Men of the 1970s, and giving another perspective on a key story for that era when they take on the Sentinels in New York City and around Christmas time. Everybody who knows the X-Men knows what I'm talking about. Just read it. I mean, if you love Marvel's, the title is fitting. It's an outstanding epilogue to that classic story. So that was a thrilling one-shot for me.
Excellent.
Yep, I finally, I somehow missed ordering it when it was solicited the first time, but I was able to track down a back issue. So it is in my possession, and it was worth the effort it took for me to find it.
You read it, Murd?
Well, I looked through it anyway, so I know,
Okay.
the basic thrust of it. It's the Claremont X-Men.
Yeah. The time bubble.
Yes, its time shall come. Okay, we've got a clear winner here from the listeners, and it's my hunch was that this might have been on your short list of alternate choices, also, Ian. But the winner for the listeners was the second issue of House of X, The Uncanny Life of Moira X.
Yeah. Let's get to the best cliffhanger / moment, and and we'll talk more about that issue.
Gotcha. But anyway, that is the best. That's the listener's choice for best single issue of 2019. Other stuff that the listeners were into, nipping at the heels of House of X number 2, is Batman Annual number 4, which is another one of those really memorable Tom King issues. It was in the form of pages from the Journal of Alfred Pennyworth. Just multiple different little, tightly encapsulated little crazy Batman adventures as seen through the clipped and dry vocabulary of Alfred Thaddeus Crane Pennyworth, which is extremely poignant for reasons specific to things that happened recently in Tom King's Batman run. Then Doomsday Clock number 12 was the third runner-up after that. Other stuff that the listeners liked, let's see, the final issue of Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, Detective Comics number 1000, Bizarre Adventures number 1, a one-shot that Marvel put out this year, Sea of Stars number 1, Tales of the Dark Multiverse Infinite Crisis one-shot, interesting choice, the final issue of The Walking Dead got a couple of votes, Sandman Universe Hellblazer, Klaus, The Life and Times of Joe Christmas, Scooby-Doo Team Up number 50, I totally feel that, The Green Lantern number 8, Fantastic Four number 13, and Immortal Hulk number 25. Okay, but the big winners here are Marvel's Epilogue, 20XX number 1, Justice League number 22, and House of X number 2.
Brilliant.
All right. And that will bring us right into the best cliffhanger or moment. And, Chris, I think it's your turn to lead us off here.
Okay, I'm going to go more with the moment side of that category. This is from Batman Annual number 4. Bruce Wayne meets his old high school fame, Adrian Williams, and in their meeting, in his own way, extracts a confession from her about a crime.
All right. I am going to go with, from that same issue of House of X number 2, Moira McTaggart is a mutant.
Mine is also more moment than cliffhanger, so I think we're unanimous there. It's Uncle Sam's This Is the Big One moment from Freedom Fighters number 10.
Okay, so Tom King did Batman Annual number 4. He's done all the annuals from this new volume of Batman, which he just wrapped up, or his run on it. And the premise of this is an amazing annual in general. The premise is looking at Batman's activities from day to day, and just the sheer breadth and variety of situations he deals with. And there's a variety of artists working on, and there's all kinds of tips of the hat to like even Batman, like zebra colors. It's all here. Like it's again Tom King just mining Batman's history to tell just a new and innovative and fresh take on the character. But there's one moment in the story. It's from Thursday, March 11th, in terms of the date, where he runs into at, of course, Toth's Tavern, his old high school flame, who he left behind for so he could begin his studies. To eventually become the Batman. And it's just about, he's thinking about that past and what it meant and what she meant and what's become of her, and how as they rekindle their not their romance, but just their affection for each other, she ultimately breaks down and reveals about a crime she committed. It's a powerful moment in an already sublime annual, and it's great because it also reminds us of the humanity of Bruce Wayne. That it's he's not just this dark Avenger who seems to have no feelings. It's a very powerful human moment in terms of this character's history. So that's my moment of the year.
Very cool. Looking forward to getting to it eventually.
All right.
Yep. I can back Chris up there. That annual was one of the backup choices for me for best single issue or one shot. So
for me too. Yep.
It's now getting old enough where they're all going to be on DC Universe's app for me to read. So I'll be getting to those hopefully sooner than later. All right. So I went with House of X number 2 with mine. Moira McTaggart is a mutant. And yes, that is essentially what the issue is about. But the actual point where you get to that reveal just was so unexpected because all these years she hasn't been. And then we find out that she has been, and she's been living her multiple lives throughout her existence, and essentially the moment that she dies, her life begins anew in the womb of her mother, and she has an opportunity to live her life again, as different as she could possibly make it, and which means that that the way that the Marvel Universe has been shaping itself right now is partially because of the way that she herself has been molding it, knowing what has happened in other times that she's lived this life. And it's just a really cool way of going about it, and completely puts an entirely new spin on an existing character. Just like I talked about before with Apex Lex, like this just puts Moira in an entirely new scenario. And I'm thrilled about it, and it really set the stage for what House of X and Powers of 10 was going to be, and what his future run was going to be. And just that reveal completely worked for me in every single way. So yeah, that's why I chose it.
Interesting twist, but it does make the fact that she was the first quote unquote human to die of the legacy virus all those years ago seem that much less far-fetched.
Yes, it does, and they even have a little bit of an explanation for that. Like her quote unquote death and deaths are explained away in the pages of House of X. That a lot of that was staged, just so she could go off and be the planner in a better way, without the bothering of the rest of the world.
Okay. My choice is really more for just the golly gee wow factor. It's that, and I wanted to throw something in the direction of the Freedom Fighters maxi series, which I have been enjoying, as much as I'd hoped I would, and which I can't nominate for best miniseries because number 12 came out in January of this year, unfortunately. But this is a moment from Freedom Fighters number 10. This whole maxi series has been set on the current DC Multiverse's version of the former Earth X, Earth 10. And here, the Nazis, of course, took over the world. The World War II raged for decades, and the Nazis ultimately overran the whole world. And there are Nazi versions of well-known and beloved Earth 1 DC Comics characters. And this underground resistance is being led by these old quality comics characters, Black Condor, Human Bomb, and so forth. In the first issue, the spirit of American patriotism, Uncle Sam, reemerges after a decades-long dormancy. The Nazis all but killed poor Uncle Sam. But in the 21st century, in this Nazi-controlled world, there are stirrings of the desire for freedom among the American people, like the true ideals on which this country is said to have been founded are starting to perk up again in the hearts of a great and diverse range of different American citizens, subjects of the Third Reich. And the more of that happens, the stronger Uncle Sam gradually becomes. He finds his old teammates, or the legacy bearers of his old teammates, most of whom were killed by the Nazis, and he reorganizes the Freedom Fighters, and they become more and more active, more and more visibly active, and as word spreads across Earth 10, and particularly the former United States on Earth 10, of what these freedom fighters are doing, people become bolder. Like the general citizenry begin to become conscious of the American dream once again. And the more rekindled the flame of the American fighting spirit is in the hearts of the masses, the stronger the personification of that fighting spirit, Uncle Sam, becomes. Until, by issue number 10, it's snowballed enough that Uncle Sam has regained enough of his power that he's practically back to his, comparably Spectre-like power levels. And we get to see him do something that he hadn't done in decades, and as he rushes off to, rolls up his sleeves, literally physically rolls up his sleeves and strides off to do battle with a little platoon of Nazi war wheels, he says, "Look out, Nazis, this is the big one!" And it's this big 2-page title splash, and he grows up to like a 10-story tall version of himself, and he's able to just physically punch these gigantic, monstrous war machines of the Nazis, and then reduce them to rubble. It's just really cool to see him. To see the American spirit as personified in James Montgomery Flagg's original artistic concept, striding off to war against these Nazis who have held sway for an unnaturally long time on this parallel Earth. And it's a great payoff to many issues of development with Uncle Sam and his return to consciousness, to power, and to his heroic stature. So it's just such a great moment for a longtime fan of the Freedom Fighters characters and of the Will Eisner created Quality Comics version of Uncle Sam. And so, yeah, that's something that I'm able to do for this Freedom Fighter series that I've enjoyed, just to let that moment stand forth as my favorite moment in comics of this year. And as for the listeners, their choice was, they received quite a lot of nominations, actually, and it pertains to, it's pretty closely related to your choice, actually, Chris. I mentioned that Batman Annual number 4 was poignant because of specific developments towards the end of Tom King's Batman run, the City of Bane storyline. I'm just going to say this because previews spoiled it for everyone a long time ago. The death of Alfred, which took place in Batman number 77. So that was easily the listener's choice for best cliffhanger or moment. Runner-up there is Superman's revelation of his secret identity in Superman number 18. Second runner-up was, your choice, Ian, the Moira's being a mutant, the McTaggart reveal. Some other things that the listeners nominated, the climax of the Walking Dead series. Daredevil does something that he will live to regret in the first issue of Chip Zdarsky's volume of Daredevil. Immortal Hulk number 25. Sea of Stars number 1. The mutation of Jennika in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The Declaration of Mutant Sovereignty. The revelation of the Phi Bomb in the 5 Years. And a big fight between Ben Grimm and the Hulk in Fantastic Four. So, but the official nominees in Best Cliffhanger or Moment will be Batman's meeting with Adrian Williams in Batman Annual number 4. Moira McTaggart is secretly a mutant, House of X number 2. This is the big one, Freedom Fighters number 10, and the death of Alfred in Batman number 77. All right. And then next category is going to be Best Storyline, either within a single series or crossing over between multiple series. Let's see. Chris, did you go first last time, Chris?
I did, sir.
Okay. Ian, you're up.
Okay. I'm glad I got to read it so I can finally nominate it. Flash Year 1.
Ooh, all right. Mine is also a DC. It's the Justice Doom War in the Justice League title.
Mine's from Brubaker and Phillips' Criminal, Cruel Summer, the Teague Law storyline, which is actually still running, but it began in 2019.
Mm-hmm. It qualifies.
All right, yeah. So Flash Year 1, I continue to say that the unsung hero of DC Comics is Joshua Williamson. This man has been writing Flash for quite some time now, and he's been writing him well. And this is coming from a guy who has never really been that big of a Barry Allen fan. Like, I enjoy the show, and I enjoy that version of Barry Allen, but comic book Barry Allen's never really done it for me. I've always been a Wally guy. Just, because it's what I grew up with. It's, Justice League, made Wally West such a great character. And, I've got years and years of Mark Waid stories to read from Wally that I adore. And here we are with Flash Year One for the character of Barry Allen. And he's crafted a very unique and interesting origin story for the Flash. Starts off exactly the same, because obviously he's got to get hit by the lightning. Come on, that's going to happen. But what happens next is not at all what you would expect. One of the first things that happens to Barry Allen when his speed activates is he time travels. And he time travels into the far future, his far future, and meets his future self. And things go very differently from there, origin-wise. It's you still got a decent amount of beats in there, and obviously he's not going to stay in the future forever. But it makes the Turtle a menacing villain. The Turtle,
not easy to do.
Not easy to do, but it also makes sense when you think about it, because the Turtle is literally the opposite of the Flash. He's the slow one, so. Of course, that would make him the villain that would be the most difficult for the Flash to beat, because he's literally stealing your speed. So it works very well that way, and they build Iris very excellently in this, and the artwork by Howard Porter is some of the best artwork Howard Porter has ever done, and I've always been a fan of Howard Porter, so that is high praise on that level. So yeah. Please seek out Flash Year One. It's collected. It's well worth a read, and it may give you a better appreciation of the character of Barry Allen, because it certainly did for me.
Well, one thing that our two nominees have in common here, Ian, is they both make use of the Turtle, funnily enough. Because it's the Justice Doom War. It's this really massive story. I mean, the story itself, the officially entitled Justice Doom War story, runs from Justice League number 29, and it doesn't conclude until number 39, which actually came out just a couple of weeks ago. So that's 11 parts right there, and technically you could say that Snyder has been building up to, and his various collaborators have been building up to this for at least the last year and a half, since he introduced his own version of the Legion of Doom back in, I think it was the spring of 2018. But yeah, it's been a conflict between this new Legion of Doom, which is Lex Luthor, the Cheetah, Sinestro, Brainiac, Grodd, and Grodd is shown most often carrying in a little baby holster on the front of his chest the infant version of the Turtle. And I'm not sure exactly how the Turtle got regressed to infancy, but his link to the Still Force, which, as Ian hinted at in his talk about Flash Year One, that's what makes the Turtle the Flash's opposite number. He is the avatar of the Still Force, which is the inertial opposite reaction to the Speed Force, of which Barry Allen is the avatar. So Grodd is able to make use of the Turtle to negate any effectiveness that any speedster that comes up against him might have. And so this new version of the Doom Patrol, led by Lex, but all the time sort of questing towards the return of Perpetua, Dark Mother of the original multiverse, who plans to return the current multiverse to her original design, and then use them as her dark army against whatever higher plane of reality she calls home. So Doom to these people, and particularly to Lex, who's like the lead acolyte of this whole thing, is like this cosmic philosophy. It's, as a church, it even has its own sacred symbol, kind of like all the different lantern corps that Jeff Johns came up with, each had its own symbol. And the symbol of Doom happens to look a whole heck of a lot like the Legion of Doom Darth Vader helmet-shaped headquarters that was seen in the Super Friends cartoon years ago. While the symbol for its opposite, its cosmic correlative, Justice, looks a lot like the Hall of Justice. So the Justice League finds itself at odds with this surprisingly and terrifyingly effective new version of the Legion of Doom. Lex gets his upgrade to Apex Lex, as described by Ian, under his nomination for Best New Villain. And they revive Perpetua, and things just get really scary and really complicated and operatic almost. It's all the different characters thrown in from different universes and all the interesting little twists that Snyder comes up with. It reminds me a little bit of the conclusion to Final Crisis, only much less confusing. And more rewarding for the just meat and potatoes superhero comics lover. And it goes on for a long time. It tested the patience of certain readers. I mean, Shane even was starting to complain about how long this was dragging on. And it's hard to make Shane say anything negative about a Justice League comic. But I'm going on record as saying I didn't feel that it was dragging. I'm glad that it lasted as long as it did, and I'm glad that Snyder was able to take it in as many different directions and bring in as many different Justice League adjacent characters and concepts as he was. And it's just, there's a lot of multiversal stuff happening. I mean, the Monitor and Anti-Monitor and their newly introduced brother, Alpheus the World Forger. These three were the offspring, the first children of Perpetua, and they play important roles in this story. It's good to see them again in any form. And it's for a crisisologist, it was must-read stuff. I mean, both the actual 11-part story and the year and a half's worth of build-up to it. I mean, just shortly before the Justice Doom War began, we had a story called The Sixth Dimension, which actually involved Mixus Pitlick and Batmite mixing it up with the Doom, the Legion of Doom and their plans as kind of a backdrop to that. So lots of really cool things that longtime DC fans would enjoy are being done by Snyder as part of the build-up to and the execution of this story. So, yeah, if you're a DC fan, this is a story you probably should have at least been dipping into or keeping one eye on. And, I gotta give it my nom for best storyline of the year.
I'm pretty sure at one point you accidentally said Doom Patrol. I know you meant Legion of Doom.
I did, yes. I kind of thought. I nearly did it a second time, and that's when I realized, oh, crap, I've done that more than once. So thank you for calling me that, Ian. I did mean Legion of Doom.
No problem. I also almost broke into Gurr's Doom song from Invader Zim once or twice, but I stopped myself.
Oh, I only wish I could have joined in with you on that, Ian, but I actually never watched Invader Zim.
Aw.
I feel sorry for myself, too.
All right. Shouldn't be surprised to regular listeners. I rave about Criminal constantly. Everything that Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips has produced, a lot of the great crime noir comics that have come out in recent years, I'm a huge fan of. I laud them endlessly on the air. And the Criminal Saga, which has had several volumes now, and everything's available in trade. This latest story brings back a character that's been referenced and shown before and sort of ultimately shows his fate. And again, I don't want to spoil too much, but if you enjoy reading stories or watching films that are very much in the crime noir tradition, that really get into the sordid details of that lifestyle, I don't think there's no better presentation in any medium than Criminal. And this is one of the real sort of mainstay characters of that world, and we're seeing what ultimately happens to him. And these are creators who, for me, are just on a different level. A lot of the other creators working comics, and to be fair, they're not bound by a lot of sort of the corporate demands of the big two properties. I mean, they own this concept. They produce under the Image banner, but it's theirs. And this story is, for me, one of the great culminations of this whole tapestry they've been weaving in the world of Criminal. So whether it's this or just go back to the beginning, but any of the Criminal stories can really be read on their own, but they all do fit together ultimately. But there's really no better creative team in comics, I think, than Brubaker and Phillips.
Agreed on that.
And a certain number of the listeners also agreed, Chris, as we shall see. But the greatest number of the listeners were, again, joining in the Love Fest for Hickman's X-Men revamp. They nominated it under a variety of different names and titles: House of X, Powers of X, the storylines that spun out of that in the X-Men monthlies, all of which I've chosen to subsume under the heading Dawn of X. Having done that, we have a winner who comes in with quadruple the number of nominations of any other nominee in this category. So that is going to be the listener's nominee then, the Dawn of X storyline, as carried out across a variety of limited and ongoing series throughout the course of 2019. Runner-up was a tie between a different criminal storyline, Bad Weekend, and also good.
I'll be talking about that later.
Oh, okay. Okay, TBC. And also Marvel's War of the Realms event. Some other things that the listeners liked, the Deceased story at DC, Leviathan Rising, also at DC, the X-Men Grand Design miniseries, City of Bane in Tom King's Batman run, the Namor storyline in Chip Zdarsky's Invaders, Lost in the Multiverse in Young Justice, the concluding arc of Wicked and the Divine, the confrontation between Deathstroke and Batman, the Other in Teen Titans, and even the bizarre father-son relationship that develops between Batman and Jarro, the spawn of Starro, in the Justice League series. Like, this is one of those little miniature starfish-shaped probes that Starro produces that he sends off to help him conquer worlds. This one evolved independent, like autonomous thought and sentience, and the personality of like a 10-year-old kid, and it fixates on Batman and decides he's going to be his adoptive father figure. And so we have this mini Starro running around in a Robin costume, cracking wise and talking like a member of the Newsboy Legion. He's massively powerful. He has most of on a slightly smaller scale, the massive telepathic abilities of his sire, but he's fighting on the side of justice as a member of the Justice League, and it's a worthy nominee as a kind of a character-based plotline, not so much like a name crossover or story arc, but it's a subplot in that Justice League run of which I also think so highly. So, kind of a cool thing for one of our listeners to nominate. Okay, but the nominees, the final slate in Best Storyline of 2019 are Cruel Summer from Criminal, Flash Year 1, The Justice Doom War, and Dawn of X. All right, and the next category is going to be the Best Sleeper or Surprise Hit of 2019. And for that one, I have opted to go with Once and Future.
All right, Chris?
The History of the Marvel Universe.
Mm.
And I am going with a Comixology original, Afterlift.
Oh, wow.
By Chip Zdarsky.
Oh.
That is a tremendous sleeper. Okay. All right. So Once and Future. This, I had a couple different ideas in mind for this category, and most of them are comics that were originally supposed to be limited duration series that instead have found new life as an ongoing series. Another example of that, my runner-up was going to be the Wonder Twins from DC's Wonder Comics. I went with Once and Future just to put something else in here that's not from Marvel or DC. And so this was actually published by Boom Studios. It was written by Kieran Gillen, art by, I believe, Dan Mora, who was the artist that worked with Grant Morrison on his shamanistic take on Santa Claus, Klaus. And it tells the story of a mild-mannered, ancient British historian and museum curator named Duncan, who's just this well-meaning knavish. You can just sort of picture him babbling, just charmingly befuddled like Hugh Grant. And he's not very good with the ladies. His job and his life aren't very interesting. But then one night he's in the middle of a date that's already going badly when he's called away by his grandmother, who has wandered away, as she fairly often does, from the home where she's kept. And his grandmother, there's nothing mental. She's not suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's or anything like that. Quite the opposite. She's very sharp mentally, and she's also a former mythical monster hunter. She's got a background as an archaeologist and a classicist of her own. But what she knows that most people don't is that many of the myths of ancient Arthurian England are really real. And she is one of a small circle of the defenders of the realm that have been keeping modern-day United Kingdom safe from these ancient threats for a long time. And so on this first night out, Duncan has to go and answer his grandmother's urgent summons because we eventually learn he's been secretly groomed by his grandmother for years without even his knowledge to become like a recurring hero, like the legend foretold that's going to come back in England's time of greatest need to battle off another version of England's past, a much darker version that's also going to come back in its own idea of England's time of greatest need, to create that greatest need by creating serious problems for the United Kingdom. So it's kind of a dark, twisted take of the king under the hill, and the once and future king that's supposed to come back. It's a version of the king that modern day England and most of its citizens would not want to come back. So Duncan, poor hapless Duncan, and his badass grandma are the ones who have to hunt down magical relics that are going to be used to prevent England's fall as a result of these dark forces returning. So it's written by Kieran Gillen, so it's bound to be sharp and conceptually strong, and it's kind of a subtle little take on the political duality of modern day United Kingdom. They're pretty divided over there politically, just as we are here in the United States. And this idea of these two different strains of the returning king myth at odds with each other sort of speak to that. So it's a pretty strong series, and it's had a powerful enough response that Boom has gone ahead and expanded this 6-issue miniseries into an ongoing series. So it was kind of a surprise hit in that regard, and it was just it's a good comic besides. So I thought it was a good idea for me to give that my nomination as best sleeper or surprise hit of the year.
Well
All right. So, I'm sorry, Ian, you were next. I apologize.
No, you are. Please go right ahead.
All right. Sorry, I'm my exhaustion is starting to show. I apologize. Okay, so some people might be wondering why I chose, a merely mainstream title like History of the Marvel Universe as the sleeper surprise hit. The reason I did is because, Marvel has a great history of their handbooks, and we know what the wonderful work that Mark Gruenwald did in the official handbook went back to the 80s. And then quite a few books like that over the years. So I was intrigued by this because Mark Waid was involved. But I got to tell you, and we talked about this on the air when the first couple issues came out, I really wasn't expecting, and maybe I should have because it was Waid, but just the loving attention, not just to detail, but his ability to make a handbook very captivating reading. And the fact that he just explores pretty much every nook and cranny of the Marvel Universe and puts it in a chronology that is compelling. And the other sort of the really big co-star of this is the art by Javier Rodriguez is breathtaking. It has almost this delightful animated quality to it. And then of course they have, and Murd of course will appreciate this, extensive annotations in the back of each issue. This is one of the most comprehensive handbooks I've seen in comics in terms of capturing the essence of the history of an entire universe. It's an incredible achievement, and I got far more than I was expecting out of it, worth every penny, and very much my satisfying surprise hit of the year.
All right. And mine is, like I said, a Comixology original, Afterlift by Chip Zdarsky and Jason Liu. Now, you don't have to be a Comixology Unlimited subscriber to read this series. Also, if you happen to have Amazon Prime and you have the Kindle app, you can just go ahead and download it for free. And it will be available digitally as a collected volume later this month. As a volume 1. And it's about a rideshare driver named Janice Chen who gets a ride, picks up an individual who she thinks is this wealthy businessman who has her drives her to this location to pick someone up. And then all of a sudden her app starts going crazy and so does her phone. And she's informed that she's no longer a rideshare driver. She's driving them to the afterlife to drop off a soul. And until she does so, she's basically stuck with this individual and stuck with him. Unless she does exactly what she asks him, she's going to be a lost soul. And that's what this series is about. It completely threw me off guard because I had no idea that this series was coming out until I opened up my Comixology app, and there it was. I saw it came out in 2019. It actually just concluded about a month ago, so I haven't read the last issue yet. But I've read enough of it to know that this is my choice. And I'd actually love to see him do more in this world, one way or the other. And the art by Jason Liu, I was very unfamiliar with his work before this, but it's clean, it's concise, and it gets the point across, and that's exactly what you need to do. So yeah, I freaking love this series, and I will sing its praises to the listeners with my pick of Afterlift Volume 1, and I hope it also gets collected, in paper at some point. So, because I think more people should be reading this if they haven't already done so.
Ian, I love Zdarsky. I had no idea this existed. Thank you for bringing it to our attention.
My pleasure, man. Yeah, again, all part of that Comixology Originals initiative. And I'm happy to see that anybody with Amazon Prime can read it for free on a Kindle app, because I didn't actually know that until I opened up Amazon right before we started recording. So that's a way to get around that if you haven't paid Comixology for getting into their ecospace.
All right. So a digital-only comic is cracking the paper ceiling here at the CGS Best of Awards.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you for that progressive move, Ian.
My pleasure.
All right. Now, Best Sleeper and Surprise Hit is one of the conceptually loosest categories we have here. You can throw just about anything in there, be it ongoing series, miniseries, started in 2019, concluded in 2019, or otherwise. And the listeners did indeed throw just about anything in there. There was not a lot of consensus, and as a result, we have a 6-way tie among the listeners. So we're going to have 11 different nominees. 9 different nominees in Best Sleeper or Surprise Hits. Yeah, there was not 6 different nominees here from the listeners, and not a one of them overlapped with any of ours. So for the listeners, the 6 nominees going in here are going to be Spider-Man Life Story, the Invaders series by Zdarsky.
That's excellent.
With some art by Butch Geis and others. The new Daredevil series, also written by Zdarsky. Mark Russell's Red Sonja series at Dynamite. Naomi from DC's Wonder Comics. And Something is Killing the Children, which is a series from Boom Studios, written by James Tynion IV, who also, it's occurred to me, co-wrote the Justice Doom War storyline with Scott Snyder. I didn't mean to leave him out in my description of that arc. So there's 2 different Boom Studios offerings in this category. So yeah, it's a lot of nominees here. The final slate is going to be History of the Marvel Universe miniseries, Afterlift from Comixology, Once and Future from Boom, Spider-Man Life Story, Invaders, Daredevil, so that's 3 Zdarsky entries here in this category. Red Sonja, Naomi, and Something is Killing the Children.
Something is killing the children.
Something is killing the children. Boy. All right, and that brings us to the midway point here. Now, we've covered 8 categories, 8 to go. It's bringing us up to the best ongoing comic of the year 2019. It may have begun during that year. It didn't need to. It could have begun earlier. So, Chris, what have you got?
Monstrous.
Ooh, wow.
Well done. Well done, sir. All right. I'm basic. Immortal Hulk.
All right, very good.
Nothing basic about that, Ian. A magnificent choice.
And I'm just as basic as you are, Ian, because my nominee is Batman.
Nice.
So the first thing I would say is that any three of the titles mentioned here could easily have been my selection.
Mm-hmm.
As I noted in our last comic talk, Ian turned me on to Monstrous just recently, and I devoured the trades, and the series is ongoing into this year. I spoke a lot about Monstrous in that episode, and again, I really don't want to give away too much. Again, all I'll say is this is a transcendent book. It's a book that transcends what some people see as the limitations of the medium. I mean, I don't see the medium that way, but many people might. Many people maybe don't necessarily read comics. This is the kind of book that can bring them in to our beloved hobby. The creators are telling a story that is clearly, I would hope, completely under their control. They are world building. If you love Tolkien, if you love Game of Thrones, if you love Sandman, you're going to love this book. It is one of the most exciting new ongoing series I've read in quite a few years, and I can't give it enough praise. And I'm stingy with my praise now with a lot of books. And there's a lot of characters I still love. A lot of titles though tend to kind of leave me a bit flat these days. Not this. This is bold storytelling that incorporates a lot of the classic timeless elements of myth and legend, and a lot of and even of other properties that you might be familiar with. But as with all the great creators, they're putting their own sort of spin on those timeless aspects. Easily one of the best comics being produced today, without question.
Happy to see that on the list, man. Happy to see that on the list.
Thanks, bro.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the one downside with your new love affair with this series, Chris, is that you're going to be kept waiting for it at about the same rate as for Saga. Because it would appear that Monstrous has been in publication since the fall of 2015, and in that time, only 26 issues have been produced.
Yes.
But worth the wait, apparently.
Oh, it sure is.
That's something I'm going to have to read at some point, because I'm taking your praise to heart here, Chris.
All right, I've said plenty about Immortal Hulk before, and
we all have.
So I'll just basically say it continues to be great. It's one of those series that still manages to surprise me with new issues. It's reinventing the wheel while it's at the same time appreciating the wheel and saying, hey, the wheel was pretty good to begin with, so let's not do too much. It's an excellent Hulk book. It's one of those titles that just reinvigorated the character for me, because we had a couple of years of sort of stagnant Hulk where it was just the same old, and this was like, hey, remember when the Hulk was a horror title? Let's try to bring it back to that a little bit.
And Ian, that's a great point, because at the core of it, the concept is really simple.
Yeah.
And reinvigorate is the right word here, because they've taken that concept, which in many ways has long been forgotten.
Yeah.
And they've built a whole saga around it, and in doing so, honor the entire history of the character.
Exactly.
It is one of the most exciting and innovative Marvel titles I've mentioned before that I've read, probably since the Slott Ulrich Silver Surfer run. So I think it's a masterpiece.
Yep. And yeah, I can't wait to read more of it, and I'm glad that it's getting as much praise as it is from other award shows and from Marvel itself, and it's been collected in like 7 different ways so far. So there's plenty of ways to catch up on the Immortal Hulk, and if you have not done so, do so.
Yep, here. I've got a couple of trades of that I ordered recently, just sitting at home waiting for the right moment.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about Batman either, because we've talked at length, during these award shows and elsewhere on CGS about Tom King's phenomenal Batman run, which reached its end. So this is the last opportunity I'll get to nominate Tom's Batman run, Tom and his various artistic collaborators, in particular Mikhail Hanin. But yeah, the City of Bane, brought this whole big juggernaut of Batman greatness to a close. It's great comics. Just to see our prior remarks. So yeah, this is my last chance to nominate Tom King's run. So I'm doing it now, and have done so now.
Well, that just means that next year you can nominate him for Breakthrough Talent.
Sure, I think we're codifying this into the official awards rules that there's like a house limit of 3 breakthroughs per creator. And we're putting those rules to the test already this year, as you will see when we get down to that category. But yes, Batman is in there. It's just Tom King's just fantastic, transcendent treatment of Batman and his world and his history. Let's see. But as for the listeners are just they're just going as basic as you are, Ian. They nominated Immortal Hulk 2.
Nice.
So that's rest easy. That it was a good decision to make. Not runner-up for the listeners, though, was the new volume of Daredevil by Chip Zdarsky. So that's going to be slotted in there as the listener's choice. Other things that the listeners were fond of, it was a 3-way tie for second runner-up between Gideon Falls, Criminal, and Batman. So I made some of the listeners' voices heard with my own pick there. Other things that were chosen by the listeners, let's see, Scotty Young's Middle West, Justice League was in there, Die was in there, Giant Days, Dan Slott's Fantastic Four, Paper Girls, Outer Darkness, Something is Killing the Children again, The Green Lantern by Grant Morrison, which was my second choice behind Batman, the new Usagi Yojimbo series from Stan Sakai at IDW, Black Science, Deadly Class, and Lazarus. But the official 4 nominees, the big 4 here in Best Ongoing Comic, are Monstrous, Immortal Hulk, Batman, and Daredevil. Stalwarts all.
I think you just accidentally came up with the name for the sequel series of Something is Killing the Children. Something is Killing the Children again.
Something is still killing the children. Get me Tynan the Fourth on the phone.
Nice.
All right, let's talk some graphic albums now. That's the next category. Best graphic album, which can be either an original graphic novel or a collection, hardcover or otherwise, of older material. Okay, Ian, you can lead us off this time.
Speaking of Middle West Volume 1.
All right, very good. Mine is the graphic novel Giraffes on Horseback Salad.
Mine is the collection Bad Weekend.
Oh, all right.
Nice. All right, yeah. So Middle West is a series that began in 2018 by Scotty Young, and he also is working with an artist this time of the name of Jorge Corona, who's done number 1 with a Bullet and Big Trouble in Little China, Old Man Jack, and a bunch of other things. And this is one of the most spirited series that I've read in quite some time. It's about a boy living in the town of Farmington, and when the series first starts off, you're not quite sure whether or not this is supposed to be a version of our world or whether it's something, fantastical, like if it's a fantasy world or something along those lines.
Copyright Shane.
Yes, indeed. Because he's wearing jeans and he's wearing a normal jacket, and even though he seems to be talking to this fox, we're not quite sure whether or not that's in his head or whether it's something more than that. And by the time the first issue is over, you can clearly tell that this is not quite our world. It might be a version of it in one way or the other, but it's definitely a world of magic and fantasy and danger and suspense, and it all stems from, at least one of the main conflicts of the series stems from the fact that this boy's father is literally the wind, and he's not a nice man. And because of that, our lead character winds up going off on his own adventure to try and save his town in some ways, and also just to get away from his father. And that's what Abel's adventure is in this book. It's a gorgeously produced book, and the first collection of this has the first 6 issues in it. And if you're not hooked after these first 6 issues, then I don't know what to tell you. It's damn good stuff. Scotty Young has been one of my favorite creators for years, and he's continuing to create series that are just as compelling to the teen crowd as they are to the adults. And that is definitely the case here with Middle West. So Middle West Volume 1 is my choice.
All right. Middle West Issue 1 is somewhere in my to-be-read pile.
Nice.
So one of these days I'll know what you're talking about, Ian.
I can't wait.
All right.
I can. I'll wait about 5 years.
Yes. I believe in your patience, Ian. You can do it. All right, my nominee in this category is one that Ian and I were both kind of excited about when we read about it in previews a long time since. I'm not really a big consumer of original graphic novels. This is one of only a handful that I bought this year, and fortunately, it was the one that I was most excited to buy, and fortunately, it lived up to my expectations. It's called Giraffes on Horseback Salad. It's published by Quirk Books, which is headquartered right around here, near where I sit in Philadelphia. And it is a graphic novel adaptation of an unproduced collaborative screenplay between Salvador Dali and Harpo Marx. It was in 1937. It was pitched to Louis B. Mayer of MGM Studios as a Marx Brothers vehicle, and it was resoundingly rejected by Louis B. Mayer, who was not that big a fan of the Marx Brothers to begin with, but he certainly wasn't going to be doing this crazy idea, which is just soaked in Dali's particular brand of egotistical and autoristic surrealism. But it sort of languished in film legend for years, and then a self-described pop culture archaeologist named Josh Frank, who had been a fan of the Marx Brothers for years. There's actually a picture of him in here of him dressed as Harpo for Halloween when he was 12. He decided he needed to pursue this and bring it to life in some way. So Josh Frank, he consulted with Harpo's son Bill. He consulted with private museum collections in Europe, and he found some of Dali's original notes. He found an old typewritten copy of what Frank believes is the original treatment that Dali and Harpo brought with them to MGM, and used his own authorial abilities to fill in the blanks in this incomplete skeleton of a story, and drafted an artist named Manuela Pertega, who is from Dali's native Spain, and brought this whole thing to Quirk Books, and produced a graphic novel adaptation of the greatest Marx Brothers movie never made. And you can tell that that there is love in this. You can feel the author's affection for the original Marx Brothers movies. And he wanted to try to create something that's close to a 21st century extrapolation of a 1937 Marx Brothers film that never happened, as he could get. He consulted with no less a personage than Tim Heidecker of Tim and Eric's awesome show, Great Job, who brought some of the several members of the writers' staff from the awesome show Great Job to punch the thing up and throw in a bunch of somewhat authentic-sounding Marx Brothers dialogue. The author even consulted an off-Broadway impresario named Noah Diamond, who revived an off-Broadway Marx Brothers musical a few years ago. It was called I'll Say She Is, and got him to write 3 or 4 original songs in a Marx Brothers / Cole Porter lyrical style. I mean, obviously there's no music attached to them. There's just the lyrics are just presented on the page here, incorporated into the artwork. But, what is a Marx Brothers movie, whether on film or in comics form, without some songs? So the author even goes that extra mile and provides that to the reader. And the artwork by Manuela Pertega, I mean, it's got, there are passages that they've got kind of this stiff, symmetrical late 30s Art Deco look to them, but there's also passages where that's cracked wide open and outpours flaming giraffes and giant eyeballs in much the Salvador Dali surrealist style. It's a love story between this young businessman and a woman who is the living personification of the artistic genre of surrealism. And it's also, per Josh Frank's will, kind of an origin story for Harpo, like the character that Harpo plays in the Marx Brothers movies, and how he got to be the mute, horn-honking trickster figure that he was in those movies. So it's a satisfying package, I would say. The humor plays very well. A couple of bits are a little anachronistic for me. The artwork is really quite good, although there are a couple of points where Senora Pertega's love of manga becomes apparent. And there's nothing wrong with loving manga and drawing in a manga-inspired style. I'm not just I'm just not that sure it's compatible with the Marx Brothers necessarily. But yeah, it's one of very few graphic novels I bothered to pick up this year, and I'm happy I did. I actually went out of my way to purchase this from Quirk Books directly when I was in Emerald City in Seattle last year, and I don't think that many people were aware that it was even published, but it's an interesting find, and I'm happy to give it a higher profile by nominating it in this category for these awards.
Murd, I'm so glad you did, because I had completely forgotten about Giraffes on Horseback Salad, and now I'm way interested all over again. So thank you for that.
That's, you're going to be here in studio in a couple of weeks, Ian. I'll just leave my copy here. You can pick it up and borrow it and read it at your leisure.
Hell yeah. I cannot wait. Yeah, no, because my visit to the Dali Museum in Florida was a trip, to say the least, and I can only imagine what a Marx Brothers script by him would have been like. That's, oh my God.
Yes. Unfortunately, we can all only imagine it, but I'm pretty pleased with the imagination, well, the way in which Frank and Pertega have imagined it in this OGN.
Nice.
So, see what you think. Okay, as for the listeners, they came up with a very...
Oh, wait. Did I do mine yet?
Oh, no, you didn't. That's right. I apologize, Chris. See, all of our fatigue is showing.
No sweat, brother, no sweat. I almost forgot myself. So, okay, this is my way, because I referenced this before, this is kind of my way of cheating, pulling a Shane tactic here, in that I really wanted to talk about this book, but I was torn between this and the Cruel Summer storyline. So I decided, but Brubaker and Phillips gave me an out, because the Bad Weekend storyline from issues 2 and 3 of Criminal was so highly acclaimed and well received. They released a hardcover collection with some additional scenes and into a hardcover graphic novel. So this is not an OGN; it's a collection, but it falls in the category. It's one of the most captivating stories I read all year. Basically, the premise of it quickly is that the main character's name is Hal Crane, and he is sort of the archetypical demoralized, aging comic creator who, through a combination of bad luck, bad choices, and bad dealings, the comic book industry has basically eaten him alive. And he's a very important creator in this world, but he's a beaten man. And it's just about him going to a convention to get a Lifetime Achievement Award. It's from the perspective of the young, enthusiastic fan who's his handler for the weekend. That's all I'll say, but it's one of the most devastating stories I've read in not just this year, but in recent years. And if you're well versed in the history of the comic book medium, and everybody in the show, we all talk about that all the time. I'm particularly a lover of that history, but it's a very often bittersweet and brutal history. And Brubaker and Phillips really take on that theme in this sort of fictionalized version of that type of person that we've read about in many different ways, many different forms. If you study the history of the medium, especially going back to the Golden Age, the Silver Age, this is a crushing, and I mean that in the best possible way. But this is a crushing story, and it gets a wonderful treatment in this collected version. So just go online or go to a bookstore and order it or buy it. You will. It's another example of why this is the creative team in comics for me.
It sounds like they're Cavalier and Clay.
Obviously not as sprawling or as involved, because it's only two comic book issues. But Cavalier and Clay, though, has, like, when you read Cavalier and Clay, there's elements of it's bittersweet. There's also elements of hope and promise.
Right.
Then this story, like,
there is none.
That's all. If that was there, it's long since been passed by, and now you just have the detritus of this man's life. And again, part of it's things that were done to him, parts things he did to himself, and now you have sort of the end result of that and who he is and how he conducts himself. It's Whew. Say no more.
Enough said. But, yep, as mentioned earlier, the listeners definitely were feeling bad weekend also, because that was one of their choices for best storyline. As for the listener's choice for best graphic novel, though, it's a pretty sensible choice, I think. They went with They Called Us Enemy, as conceived by George Takei about his family's experiences in the American internment camps, for those of Japanese origin. So conceived by him, co-written with a couple of co-authors, and art by Harmony Becker. So, yeah, that is the number one choice for the listeners. Nominations were pretty scattershot in this category as well. Even more so, if anything, than in Sleeper Surprise Hit. The only other thing that got more than one nomination was Sentient by Jeff Lemire and Gabriel Walta. And it's just kind of a really mixed bag of collections and the occasional OGN thrown in there. But the preliminary winners in the Best Graphic Album category will be Criminal Bad Weekend, Middle West Volume 1, Giraffes on Horseback Salad, and They Called Us Enemy.
A nice eclectic group.
Oh, yes. Which is the best kind of group, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Best Writer. I think it's my turn to lead off now, isn't it?
Sure.
Hard to keep track. Okay, I'm for Best Writer in Comics. I'm going with Kieran Gillen.
Jonathan Hickman.
Al Ewing.
Oh, all right. Okay. So Kieran Gillen for Once and Future, for his Peter Cannon Thunderbolt miniseries, and for his grand finale to the Wicked and the Divine, Wickdiv. Just among other things. He's just consistently solid, wildly imaginative, usually with just a self-subverting sense of humor to his work. He's a pretty smart guy, and he's a restless intellect. I can usually count on him to churn out a good story. So I went with him.
And that's pretty much the exact reason why I went with Jonathan Hickman, and the fact that he, managed to do what very few other people have been able to do over the past couple of years and breathe new life into the X-Men. So, yeah, Jonathan Hickman is very much my choice because really it was his year in my eyes. It was his year.
All right, Al Ewing. It's Immortal Hulk. We've already talked about this book so much either tonight and in previous episodes. I'm not going to belabor the point too much, but one thing I'll say, and this is one of the reasons why I love Christopher Priest so much, and Murd referenced this really when he's talking about Vampirella, when a writer steps into a long-established property that maybe you think has already been sort of done to death and wrung out of ideas and so forth, then does something completely innovative and new, that's my best writer. So, and he continues to do that with that series. So this was a really easy selection for me.
And for the listeners' part, they think this is the year of Chip Zdarsky. And given how many of his projects were nominated for Best Sleeper or Surprise Hit, I can understand why they felt that way. Picking up in Zdarsky's wake, though, we have Tom King. We had several nominations for Ian's choice of Jonathan Hickman and Chris's choice of Al Ewing. Also some for Greg Rucka and Jeff Lemire, a few each for those gentlemen. We had some for Tom Taylor, Scotty Young, Mark Russell, Kieran Gillen also, Ed Brubaker, Rick Remender, Dan Slott, Ta-Nehisi Coates, and Dash Shaw, and one Daniel Warren Johnson. Also Jason Aaron. And and others. But the big winners here are going to be Al Ewing, Jonathan Hickman, Kieran Gillen, and Chip Zdarsky. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. So moving on from Best Writer to Best Artist of 2019. Let's see. Chris, you may go first.
Sana Takeda. Monstrous.
Excellent. Javier Rodriguez.
You took mine, Ian. You took mine.
It was going to happen eventually.
By gosh. All right, fine. I got to go to my list of alternates here. Okay. Dale Eaglesham, come on down.
Nice.
It's my turn, right?
It is. It is.
Okay. So after Ian's recommendation, I got out the trades, and I'm not even here because the series is running into this year. This ran into 2019, so I haven't been this exhilarated by artwork in quite some time. I think one of the reasons maybe why this book takes so long is just the level of, I'm not even sure how to put this, just because I'm not an art critic, but the loving attention to detail and the world building, the sheer, I mean, her artwork is it's like visual poetry. And I know that sounds a bit like I'm pontificating. I don't mean to. It's just, I'm really at a kind of a loss for words to describe how tremendous this work is. And how it's on a level that I think very few comic artists could achieve at this point. I mean, it's simply beautiful. I mean, it's very much in keeping with the flavor and tone of the story and the world that they're revealing to us in Monstrous. I can't imagine this won't someday be adapted as either an animated film or a series or a live action, and whatever they do. If they just stick with the source material, how evocative this artwork is, it's going to just knock people right out of their socks. So this wasn't a tough call for me either.
Wow, that works for me in every single way.
Thanks, honey.
And I stole Murd's pick for a reason, because I was a fan of Javier Rodriguez's work before, but History of the Marvel Universe took that to a new level because he managed to do so many different eras of in one book, and it was beautiful. It was absolutely breathtaking how well he did it. He has a very simplistic yet detailed style that's very hard to duplicate, and I was blown away by it, and I really hope he gets more work to come in a similar fashion, whether it be on a history book like this or whether it be on like one of the big books. Because I'd love to see him tackle Spider-Man. I'd love to see him tackle Avengers. I want to see him do so many things now after watching his work on History of the Marvel Universe. So I had to nominate him for my best artist, and just for that alone.
Yep, and it was on the strength of that Herculean accomplishment of his in History of the Marvel Universe that I, too, was going to nominate the man, Ian, for the reasons stated. I mean, he had to cover 80 years' worth of Marvel history in 6 extra-size issues, which is he's actually succeeded in topping the great George Perez, who covered 50 years' worth of DC history in only 2 oversized issues. And so he's looking an awful lot like the logical successor to George Perez in the role of the great delineator of superhero history in voluminous detail. And so what Ian said, I echo. As for my own nominee, I'm just kind of tossing him in there on the fly. So Dale Eaglesham because Shazam. Enough said.
I'm just saying, nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that, right? Yes. He also came on in kind of a hurry because the original artist for Shazam was having difficulty keeping a deadline, apparently. So Eaglesham was not only a talented artist, but he's also kind of a hero. As for the listeners, we have a 2-way tie. Another one of these categories where there wasn't a lot of consensus. There are 2 artists who received the same number of nominations, and they're the only 2 that received more than 1 nomination apiece. So they're both going on the ballot, and they are Liam Sharp, artist of The Green Lantern, under the writing of Grant Morrison, and Tradd Moore, who did the artwork for the Silver Surfer Black miniseries.
Nice.
All right, other people that are getting nominated here. Let me see. I think I must have written this down in the wrong place because Donny Cates is not an artist, is he?
Nope.
Yep.
He's a writer. Yep.
So either I made a mistake or the listener did. But anyway, other people we've got here: Ian Bertram, Nick Darrington, Pepe Larraz, Joel Jones, Francis Manipul, Jorge Fornes, Jamie McKelvey, Gary Frank, Michael Gaydos, Cliff Chang, Jamal Campbell. Clay Mann, Stephanie Hans, Ivan Reis, Brian Hitch, Michael Lark, Ryan Suk, Tana Ford, Mark Cicchetto, Joe Bennett of the Immortal Hulk, Russell Douterman, Dustin Nguyen, Sean Isaacs, John Malin, etc. All right, but the 5 nominees that will be the final slate for this category of Best Artist are Sana Takeda, Javier Rodriguez, Dale Eaglesham, Trad Moore, and Liam Sharp.
Murd, before we go further, I have to depart. I apologize because I had a family issue earlier in the day that upended my schedule tonight, and I can't stay on any longer, and so I totally apologize for that. I just sent Ian my last 4 selections. So, Ian, if you could read those out for me, I appreciate it.
Yeah, not a problem.
Again, I'm sorry that I have to go, but
No, we understand as
Life
always, Chris.
life happens.
Mm-hmm.
So,
It does.
I want to point out, though, Murd, that, again, what you do here, like this is your episode. Like you would take the time to compile all this information, and I can't salute you enough because I think it's one of the best things we do all year. And I'd like to bring all these different books to our people's attention and to each other's attention. It's really a delight. So I want to thank you again for helming this episode, my friend.
It's a duty and a pleasure, Chris.
Well done, brothers. All right, I'll talk to you both very soon, my friends.
All right, take care,
All
man.
right, take care, guys. Good night.
Good night,
Bye.
Chris. All right, soldiering on now. We're on the home stretch here. The final 4 of 16 categories to talk about. We go from Best Writer and Best Artist to Best Writer Artist, which must be one creator who does both write and produce art for a single story or project. Okay, and Ian, I think it's your turn to go first, so go right ahead.
Okay. So I was going to go with one individual, but I've already given them some praise earlier tonight. So instead, I'm supporting Norton. Mike Norton.
Right. The one and only. And which of his pug-related projects are we referencing here?
Take your pick. Any and all. Yeah, we can go with Battle Pug if it makes it easier.
Yeah, it's just the late lamented, taken from us too soon, Battle Pug ongoing from Image.
Indeed.
All right, my choice is going to be Michel Fif, who is actually a little less French than I'm making him sound in my pronunciation of his name. But he had a bit of a minor breakthrough this year because he brought his surreal love letter to Suicide Squad, Copra, to Image in ongoing form after publishing it as self-published graphic albums for several years. Also, he did a G.I. Joe miniseries for IDW, G.I. Joe Sierra Muerte. So he produced some interesting work in his signature style this year. So since we got so much Fif, I decided, what the heck, let's make him my nominee.
Why not? Yeah, and for Norton's sake, I mean, not only is he one of my favorite people, but he writes and draws incredibly well. His art has been everywhere this year, both on his own stuff and for DC Comics, and I think even a little bit for Marvel and elsewhere.
Oh, sure.
But he's always an excellent creator, and like you said, I'm sad to see Battle Pug go so soon. But there's going to be plenty more where that came from, I'm sure, in one way or another. So that's why Norton is my pick.
Yeah, he'll find a way. He's dogged in his determination.
Yes, and Mr. Eberle's pick, many probably saw coming, Mr. Terry Moore.
Yep, I certainly did. I'm sure lots of the listeners did, because lots of the listeners voted for exactly the same person. As a matter of fact, that was the listener's choice as Best Writer-Artist of the Year. And the runner-up to Mr. Moore is Ed Piskor, who was also on my short list for his continued work with his Grand Design series of miniseries. His sort of individualistic and idiosyncratic fan reconstructed history of the X-Men comics, and even took a stab at the Fantastic Four along the way. So,
Nice.
Ed Piskor, that's going to be the listener's choice after Terry Moore, which, of course, Chris took as his nomination. Other people who got nominations from the listeners, Daniel Warren Johnson of Murder Falcon and Wonder Woman Dead Earth. His name came up several different places in the nomination process. He's one to watch, apparently. We also got Sean Gordon Murphy, Matt Wagner, Jeff Lemire was in there, Jay Hernandez, James Stokoe, Rob Guillory, Ethan Van Sciver, and Stan Sakai, and even Chip Zdarsky found his way in there. But the official nominees are Terry Moore, Mike Naughton, Michelle Fife, and Ed Piskor. Those are your 4 nominees for writer-artist.
Excellent.
All right, now we move on to one of my favorite categories, Best Color Artist. And my pick for this category, it's I had a couple of thoughts in mind, but this one just kind of went through with a bullet. Dave Stewart.
Well done. This one's always tough for me because it's the thing that I notice the most, but at the same time I do not. I think this time around I'm actually going to go for a artist that has already been mentioned tonight by Mr. Eberly. But I'm specifically going for the color artist angle on this one, and that is Sonic Takeda.
Oh, well, certainly legitimate.
Yep. And Chris chose for his favorite colorist Jacob Phillips of Criminal.
Oh, okay. Any relation to Sean, do you think?
I would assume so. Just considering that Sean Phillips is on the book as well. But I'll have to look that up myself.
All right. Well, as for my own choice of Dave Stewart, I know he worked on a few different projects in the course of the year. I know I came across his name as I flipped through every comic book I bought in 2019 to come up with my nominees. But the one thing that really poked him through the ceiling here for my nominations, there's a mini-series that's I've mentioned it a couple of times over during this episode. I've been hearing buzz about it all over the place. The listeners of this podcast clearly enjoyed it quite a bit as well. Silver Surfer Black, that mini-series that came out from Marvel. It was written by Donny Cates. The pencil work was by Tradd Moore. The colors were by Dave Stewart. And this thing, what a phantasmagoria of psychedelic color and line this thing is. I mean, there is a story in place, too, of course. It's Silver Surfer goes up against Null, the god of the Venom symbiotes, which is created by Donny Cates, who was also writing this miniseries. So his way of getting one of his villains in there, plug it into another spot in the Marvel Universe. But just the visuals are what really sells this thing. Just imagine just getting baked and staring at a blacklight poster, which, let's be honest, is what blacklight posters are supposed to be used for anyway. Just staring at this thing until it unfolds over and over again into like an entire starscape of psychedelic art detail that also tells a story. That's what Silver Surfer Black basically is, and I'm pretty sure it's what it was always meant to be. I'm guessing that's where the black in the title really came from. But it's just the artwork by Tradd Moore is impressive enough, but the amount of time and effort that must have gone in from Dave Stewart, just choosing the variety of hues and just the placement of all of them, it's mind bending. Just looking at the choice of the hues and how he chose to secrete them into the different little nooks and crannies created by the Tradd Moore's artwork. It's like nothing else I saw in comics all year long. So although there are other color artists whose work I admired in the course of the year, I came this close to giving it to Tomeu Mori for applying those lambent golden hues to both Batman and the Heroes in Crisis miniseries. Tomeu Mori's colors are one of the best things about that.
That's true, yes.
But in the end, just Silver Surfer Black. And Tradd Moore's artwork was good too, but Stewart's colors in particular blew my friggin' mind on that miniseries, and there was just no other way for me to go. Dave Stewart is in there from me.
Excellent. Well, I would agree with that, and part of me wondered about Silver Surfer Black, if whether or not they named it Silver Surfer Black, sort of as an homage to the to the Tim Sale, Jeff Loeb colored series that came out before with Captain America Blue and Spider-Man. Or was it Captain America White?
It was white.
To remember.
Yeah,
it was white. Right, it was Captain America White, Spider-Man Blue, and Hulk Green or Hulk Gray.
Gray, right.
Yes,
and Daredevil Yellow.
Yes, Daredevil Yellow. Yes, yeah. I'm not sure whether or not that's an intentional homage or not, but in my head it always was.
Could certainly have been a factor too.
Yep. All right. So I went with Sana for this one, just because the colors in Monsters are just as important as anything else, and she crafts and paints this gorgeous world and gorgeous reality that is just really aided by her choice of tones and the depth that's created in the process. I could have easily put her as my best artist, but I just wanted to make sure that she got the love from me one way or another. And this is as good a place for me to do it as any, just because, again, Monsters is a gorgeous, gorgeous book, and she does all the visuals herself. And that's an achievement in any way, So I'm definitely giving her love here in the color aspect for that reason.
All right. And for Chris, it was Jacob Phillips of Criminal. Okay. For the listeners have gone with Matt Wilson, who has received quite a few nominations in these awards over the past few years, actually, and he's back on the ballot again this year. The runner-up from the listeners was a tie between Chris's choice of Jacob Phillips and Paul Mounts. Other colorists receiving some attention: Adriano Lucas, Brad Anderson, Jean-Francois Boulot, Tamara Bonvillain, who is another possibility for me, Laura Allred, perennial favorite, Pablo Parisi, Rico Renzi. One listener agreed with me about Dave Stewart, Jordi Belair, Alex Sinclair, Dean White, Mike Spicer, James Devlin, Matt Hollingsworth, and Tris Mulvihill. But again, the winners here under Best Color Artist are Jacob Phillips, Sana Takeda, Dave Stewart, and Matt Wilson.
And by the way, Jacob Phillips is actually Sean Phillips' son.
That's what I would have guessed. I had no idea, but it's what I would have guessed.
Yep. So talent most definitely runs in the family.
And how? Mm-hmm. All right, now to the last of the technical awards, the Best Letterer. I have kind of a stubborn attachment to this category. I will not leave it behind. I think it's an aspect of the comic-making craft that doesn't get nearly enough love or respect. And I'm glad that the listeners are playing along with me here this year. Fewer people have declined to nominate somebody in the letterer category than in past years, and I do thank all of you who nominated for that, among many other reasons. I have to thank you. But yeah, so Best Letterer of the Year. I've forgotten which one of us is. I guess it's your turn this time. Go ahead, Ian.
All right. Okay. I go with Russ Wooten.
All right. Fine choice. And my choice, my original choice is going to be on the ballot anyway, thanks to the listeners. So I'm just going to go with my alternate here, Tom Orzechowski.
Okay, and Chris goes with Clayton Cowles.
Okay.
All right, so Russ Wooten I chose for a couple of different books. I mean, he works on Monstrous, but he also works elsewhere, and he just does a very good job of blending text with the art, while at the same time not so much that it blends into the background. You can read every single thing that's there. You can everything is everything that's an exclamation feels like an exclamation. His placement of sound effects is very well done. And obviously, I loved his work on Invincible back in the day, but can't nominate him for that anymore because that one's gone. So may as well nominate him for what he's doing right now, which would be Monstrous and a couple other books for Image. So that's Russ Wooten, and he also worked on Walking Dead for quite some time. There we go.
All right. Tom Orzechowski, well, as I said, he was really a second choice, which I'm putting in here just to diversify the field a little more. But he laid his cosmic class calligraphy on The Green Lantern. And when you need the letter to keep up with Grant Morrison's concepts, you got to be pretty skilled in the typography department. So, yeah, I thought that was deserving. And Chris's choice of Clayton Cowles, also deserving, because he is the one who letters Batman, among a variety of other things.
Mm-hmm.
As for the listeners, actually it was a three-way tie, and two of those three are the two that you and Chris chose, Clayton Cowles and Russ Wooten. And I'm guessing that the listeners came to Wooten more for the Walking Dead connection than for Monstrous, because based on the patterns of nominations here, I'm not getting the impression that many of the listeners have been following Monstrous. But anyway, those are two of the three choices. So the listener's nominee is going to turn out to be my original first choice, Corey Pettit, who is doing a lot of work for Marvel these days. I think he's a letterer on Doctor Strange. I'm sure of that. I think he's also doing Immortal Hulk. But you can always tell his lettering at a glance, if only because he uses a slightly larger font than any other letterer working for Marvel these days. So it's a recognizable style, if just for its magnitude. And really, comics are supposed to be about big ideas and big occurrences, so why shouldn't there be big letters to bring that across? So yes, I applaud the listeners for coming up with Corey Pettit to put on here. Let's see.
Instead of BAM, it's BAM.
Sure, yeah. Let's see, some other letterers that the listeners thought of. Sal Cipriano, Simon Boland, Travis Lanham, VC's Joe Caramagna, the ever-popular Todd Klein, Rob Lee, Joe Sabino, Pablo Parisi. A couple of other people did think of Tom Orzechowski, so I'll be making them happy by nominating him. Saida Timofonte, Hassan Otsmane Elhau, Neil Uyatake, and Eric Weathers. But the big winners here are Clayton Cowles, Russ Wooten, Tom Orzechowski, and Corey Pettit.
Nice.
All right, and now we have come to the final category of the evening, the much-anticipated Breakthrough Talent of 2019, a creator that our voters have thought really made a bigger-than-usual splash in his or her career in 2019. Doesn't need to be the year that this creator first had work published necessarily, just the year during which he or she entered a new echelon of success in his or her work in the field, shall we say. All right, and my choice, struggled with this a little bit, but I ultimately decided to go with writer Jed MacKay.
That is legitimately a name I do not know, so I'd love to hear more about that, Murd.
Oh, he's breaking through, Ian. He's breaking right on through.
Yes, he's breaking on through to the other side. And Chris's breakthrough talent is Major Lee Lou for Monstrous.
Okay.
And my breakthrough talent, I went with an artist. I tend to go with an artist for this category, Mr. John Timms.
Timms?
Timms.
All right. Yeah, Jed MacKay. I thought about a couple of different people for this. Like there's Christopher Cantwell, who wrote that Doctor Doom series at Marvel that Chris is so fond of right now, and also Everything at Dark Horse. He apparently broke into comics roughly this year after working in film. And then there's Erwin Gindiz, or however his name is pronounced, on Vampirella. But there's one series that I've enjoyed fairly much from Marvel this year. It's a new series. I couldn't quite bring myself to nominate it for any other category, so I decided, what the heck, I'll nominate its writer as a breakthrough talent of this year, because he has been getting his byline on a few different Marvel things in the course of this year, including the Bizarre Adventures one-shot along the way. But he is the writer of Jed MacKay is the writer of the Black Cat ongoing series that Marvel's been publishing lately, which is a fun heist book. I mean, it's Black Cat back to her criminal roots. She's not quite this is not crime boss Felicia Hardy. It's also not lovelorn, trying to be hero for Peter Parker's sake or Spider-Man's sake, I should be, Felicia Hardy. This is a fun-loving Felicia Hardy who's kind of traipsing around the Marvel Universe, stealing important objects from well-known Marvel Universe figures, and finding time along the way for fun little digressions like enjoying a dinner date with Batroc the Leaper. This is actually something that Jed MacKay did for an entire issue. Just her having really interesting interaction she was having a nice cultured dinner out with the guy who jumps around and hits Captain America with his feet.
I love it.
You would love it, Ian. It's a good issue. The two of them actually get along quite well, and we get some interesting insights from these two picaresque figures who live life on the fringes of heroism in the DC Marvel universe. Batroc obviously being a little further beyond those fringes than the Black Cat is, but. Yeah, Jed MacKay gets strikes some good sparks with those characters, and he's put together a fun supporting cast consisting of characters with whom Felicia has worked in the past, including kind of a deep cut here, Dr. Boris Corpse, who was a part of Felicia's very first heist ever seen in comics way back in Amazing Spider-Man in the 70s in her first appearance. Jed MacKay brought him back. So, yeah, he's impressing me with his chops so far. I love the Black Cat series. I'm certainly going to continue to buy it. And I couldn't quite convince myself that Black Cat was more deserving to be nominated for things in other categories, so here's the series writer as my choice for Breakthrough Talent of 2019, looking for more opportunities be floated his way by Marvel and maybe other publishers in 2020 and beyond.
I always appreciate when a character that has never really gotten that much of the time of day winds up getting a series, whether it be with Marvel or DC or elsewhere, and it actually turns out to be excellent. I remember the Patsy Walker Hellcat series is a perfect example of that from a couple of years ago. Like one of those characters like Hellcat that's just always sort of been like a side character outside of, her original origins. And all of a sudden, here's this title that comes out of nowhere that blows you away. And you're like, there's a lot to that character that you never really thought about before.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice to see them doing that with Black Cat.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I'd love to see that happen too, Ian.
Mm-hmm. All right, I'll touch on Chris's Major League Lou for a little bit, as and I have a feeling I pretty much know along the lines he would have said it first off, since this is Chris's pick. I'll go, ugh. Okay, there we go.
That captures it, Ian.
Thank you. And from there, this really has been a breakthrough year for Marjorie Liu. Even though she's been in the business for years, and worked on X-23 and what have you. She won an Eisner this year. They gave her an Eisner for Monstrous, and that is not something to be taken lightly. And it says that a creator is definitely getting their time of day, and I believe that Marjorie Liu is finally getting that time of day, and I'm here for it. It's a great series, and she's an excellent writer and an excellent creator. So very happy to see that Chris chose her for Breakthrough Talent, and let's see what the listeners choose. But I went with John Timms for mine. Are you familiar with his work at all, Murd?
I might be, but I'm not recognizing the name. Okay.
John Timms is the artist that took over Young Justice after Patrick Gleason left. Gleason, I believe, is now working for Marvel for the most part after years of working for DC. And when Timms took over, I was a little bit worried because I thought to myself, Gleason has such a distinctive style. It's going to be hard to replicate that. And Timms is actually really close. It's not that he's aping Gleason's style per se, but he has a very similar, detailed, slightly angular approach to the artwork that works really well at giving distinct personalities and depth to the characters that he's drawing. And when you're drawing teenagers like Young Justice, you gotta give them a lot of personality, especially when some of them aren't even teenagers yet. Like the 11-year-old Teen Lantern, which is hilarious. She's 11-year-old and she's calling herself Teen Lantern. Literally just hit me now.
Another layer.
Yeah, right. But no, he's done a really excellent job with the book. Had some help with some other artists, from time to time, either finishing out pages or doing flashback sequences that he didn't work on. But I'm liking what I'm seeing from John, and I went back and saw some of the other stuff that he's done. He did some Harley Quinn work in the past, and I think he might have even done some fill-in Justice League stuff. But I really want to see where he's going to go next as an artist, and I hope he stays on Young Justice for a while and has a nice long run. So yeah, John Timms is my breakout because I hadn't heard of him before 2019, and now I have, and I like his stuff.
Okay, well, that's a good benchmark to go by as far as whether a creator has broken through or not. Yeah, and maybe he'll break through for me when Volume 2 of Young Justice becomes available in softcover.
Very possible.
Now, the listeners, voting was kind of scattershot in this category, too, but we have a two-way tie for the listeners, the nominees. So there'll be 5 breakthroughs in this category this year. It's a tie between Chip Zdarsky, whom I should point out was the winner of the Breakthrough Talent of 2018 last year, so tread cautiously here, listeners. We don't want another Tom King situation on our hands. And tied with him for Breakthrough Talent of 2019 is the aforementioned Daniel Warren Johnson of Murder Falcon and Wonder Woman Dead Earth. So those are both going to be on the ballot. Some other things, or other people for whom the listeners voted. We got Jamal Campbell a couple of times for, I think, Naomi and that Green Lantern Far Sector project. We got Leah Williams, Riley Rossmo, Jorge Corona, Jacob Phillips as a breakthrough talent. A couple of votes for Afu Chan, Joe Hill, although I'm pretty sure he's already broken through. Jorge Fornes, Trad Moore, Veronica Fish, N.K. Jemison, Christopher Cantwell, who was, as I mentioned earlier, was another creator I was thinking of for this honor. Richard Meyer of Comicsgate, Jen and Sylvia Suska, David F. Walker even, Tom Taylor, Donnie Cates, Maria Jovet, who is the one who illustrated Brian Azzarello's Faithless at Boom, Cecile Castellucci, and so forth. But the final slate for this category will be for breakthrough talent: Marjorie Liu, John Timms, Jed McKay, Chip Zdarsky, and Daniel Warren Johnson.
Well done.
All right, and that is your complete slate of nominees across 16 categories. We did it, and we got it in at just under 3 hours.
That's about old hat for us at this point, I think, for these nomination shows.
Yeah, I guess. So you're trying to cram an entire year's worth of comics and effusive praise for Zed Comics into one episode. I mean, it's almost going to have to blow up to Crisis Tapes proportions.
And now the important question: how long will they have to vote?
Well, Ian, I think we're going to give them until 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday, March 15th. Give them a nice, generous amount of time to think over their voting. And how will that voting take place? Well, listeners, all you've got to do is visit the comicforums.vanillacommunity.com, where the final slate will eventually be posted. It'll also be posted at the Comic Geek Speak supergroup on Facebook. Take a look at the various nominees in the 16 categories. Think to yourself who or what you'd like to vote for in each category, and then email your ballot to bestof@comicgeekspeak.com by the aforementioned time on the aforementioned date. Please vote for something or something. Only one nominee in each category, please. No ties, no dual votes, none of that. And please vote for one thing in at least 12 of the 16 categories. We're being a little harder on you here than we were during the nominations process when you could get away with only nominating something in half the categories. Here we ask for 3/4 of the categories to be voted in. And send that ballot complete according to those terms to bestof@comicgeekspeak.com by the end of the day on March 15th. And then I will tally up all of those votes. We usually get a better turnout for the voting than for the nominations. And sometime shortly after that date, we will come back to you with the final winners of the Comic Geek Speak Best of 2019 Awards. And I would like to extend special and effusive thanks at this time to all of you who participated in the nominations process. I was saying to Ian earlier, it was a good idea to give you guys an extra week to do so because you made very good use of that week. You really came through in the end, and we ended up having an even better turnout for nominations than we did last year. And a little additional thanks also to those of you who actually got your nominations in by the original deadline. We really appreciate that. You get brownie points and an imaginary gold sticker from all of us here at CGS.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And we'll probably wind up attaching the results show to a normal episode of CGS in one form or another, like we did last year. Because I like the way that flowed. I know we did a combo previews / results show last year, but don't know if it'll be previews this time. But we'll figure something out one way or the other to give you a full content show.
Might be comic talk, might be something else. But yeah, I think we will probably do what Ian was describing and graft the results onto something else. So you can, come for the thrill of the opening of the envelopes and stay for whatever we limp to the barn with.
Sounds good to me. And I do extend my appreciation as well to everybody who voted. And I think that it's turning out well at the Comic Geek Speak Supergroup as well, just for the extended participation on everybody's end. And I hope to see that continue for a long time to come.
Hear, 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 hear. All right. Is it time to take this into the sunset?
Yeah, I think so. I can't think of anything else to say other than Moonlight. Moonlight won. It was Moonlight. No.
You scamp.
All right, take us out, sir.
All right, play that music. If you'd like to send us an email, our address is comicgeekspeak@gmail.com. If you'd like to leave a voicemail, you can call 267-702-6642. Love to hear from you in audio form. You can like us on Facebook. You can visit the Comic Geek Speak Supergroup there on Facebook and perhaps join it. You can follow us on Twitter, where our handle is @ComicGeekSpeak. You can visit the comicforums.vanillacommunity.com, where you can leave feedback about this and many other episodes of our podcast and join in discussion threads with your fellow CGS listeners and comic lovers about a variety of topics, not necessarily pertaining to the podcast. You can also email your ballots to bestof@comicgeekspeak.com. Get those in by March 15th. Let us know which of the various nominees you have the highest opinion of as a comic fan. We'd like to give special thanks, as always, and especially right now during our pledge drive, to all of you who have donated monetarily to the show over the years. We really appreciate it. The show would not be what it is today without your help. And as always, we are uniting the world's mightiest heroes, one listener at a time.
You got it on Wednesday, and you was talking about it, going to the volume up. These guys will talk about it, everything that geeks love. From capes to laser beams, opinions like the seasons, on everything